are disproportionately affected by COVID, and the suburban white women have really been going for Joe Biden over Donald Trump in the polling straight through. If that holds, that could be key in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and other states. It could offset Donald Trump's big advantage with white, non-college educated men. And these women are staying at home, many working from home, taking care of children. They're disproportionately affected by COVID, and they're telling us, at least in the polling up until now, that they don't like the way the president has handled the pandemic. And they don't like some of his language. All right, Andrew, we have got a tremendous team of correspondents spread out across the country, analyzing results in the key states. We'll check in with them tonight. But first, a look at where the candidates are tracking tonight's outcome.
So let's start with Hallie Jackson. She's at the White House. That's where the president is watching results come in. Kristen Welker is at Joe Biden's headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. But Hallie, we'll start with you. What's the mood inside Trump team?
The president is here at the White House watching these returns come in, mixing yet again his official position here with campaign activities. An event set to be held in the East Room tonight. Several hundred supporters of the president will be here watching this all unfold. We are told by sources close to the president that he is sounding tired. You can hear it in his voice a little bit. It's raspy from all those rallies he's been holding the last couple of days. But in conversations, he is indicating that he is feeling good, feeling optimistic about his chances. So let's talk about what we're hearing from allies and aides close to the president in this campaign. They're specifically looking at some key battlegrounds, and they're feeling encouraged about states like Florida, Ohio, Iowa, some of the states that had been on that battleground map, Arizona. They're feeling optimistic about Georgia and North Carolina. There's a big question mark on Michigan. I think that many acknowledge that that is, privately, they'll say, an uphill climb for President Trump at this point, critical when it comes to the electoral vote there. And then there's a really interesting state, Pennsylvania. I asked one person close to the president which 3 states they're going to be looking at tonight, right now. And they said, well, Pennsylvania, and then Pennsylvania, and after that, Pennsylvania again. This is a state where the president has campaigned more than any other throughout this 2020 cycle. There is a lot at stake here because it could potentially be a tipping point. The president has acknowledged that very publicly. But here, the race, the polls show that it is extremely close. So a lot of eyeballs on Pennsylvania tonight. As far as the mood more broadly, listen, I covered this campaign back in 2016 when it was a come-from-behind win. I vividly remember election night with all of you that night as well. And there is the memory of that is still lingering, the sense that this campaign has been an underdog before and could be an underdog and pull out another victory again. But there are also those close to the president who are looking at the way suburban women, for example, seniors have moved away from the president, largely because of questions about his handling of the coronavirus pandemic. And that, I think, has given some folks pause tonight, Savannah.
All right, Hallie, leading us off at the White House. Thank you.
And Kristen Welker is at Biden headquarters in Delaware. Kristen, what's the mood there? What's the story there?
Well, Joe Biden watching returns with his family here in Delaware after striking a confident note throughout the day and after making some final campaign stops. He was in Pennsylvania, Scranton, where, of course, he was born, visiting his childhood home. He was also in Philadelphia, urging them to get out the vote. Why so much focus on Pennsylvania? Biden has been there several times over the past several days. Well, because the Biden campaign says, look, they don't need Pennsylvania in order to win the White House. However, it is very difficult for President Trump to win re-election if he doesn't carry Pennsylvania. Of course, that's a state that he won back in 2016. So that's why you see this intense focus on the Keystone State. They like what they're hearing so far in terms of the turnout rate, so they are watching that very closely. But they're also, of course, watching the Midwest, that blue wall that did not hold for Hillary Clinton. Biden has been there multiple times, Michigan, Wisconsin, urging people to get out and vote for him. He says to vote for change. So they will be watching quite closely. They say they don't need to win states like Florida and North Carolina, but those states could help Biden with a victory. So there is measured optimism here inside the Biden camp. Now, some Democrats privately expressing concerns that Biden hasn't had the same aggressive campaign schedule that we have seen from President Trump. I asked a campaign official about that today. This official said, look, we feel confident. We feel as though we left it all out on the field. So now they are watching and waiting with the rest of the country.
All right, Kristen Welker, thank you.
As mentioned, there is a big battle over the United States Senate. Democrats need to pick up a net of 3 seats if they win the White House, or 4 if they don't. And here are some results. Too early to call, but this is a hot race in South Carolina between Lindsey Graham, the longtime senator, and Jamie Harrison. In Georgia, we got a couple of races tonight. This one also too early to call. John Ossoff, the Democrat, David Perdue, the Republican. Now we've got what they call a jungle primary. That's the technical term. Everybody's in it, and not just these three. It's too early to call, but both of those Georgia's races could go to a runoff if no candidate gets to 50% in January.
Yeah. All right, let's look at the Kentucky Senate race, 14% in. Too early to call. Mitch McConnell up against Amy McGrath. In Virginia, too early to call. And let's see where that leaves the Senate right now. Need a drum roll with this. Democrats with 35 seats, 30 for the Republicans.
Yeah, we haven't called any yet, but we've got Casey Hunt right here in New York with us. She's watching the Senate very closely. Casey, what are the big races you got your eye on tonight?
Well, you guys just walked through some of them, and I would describe it broadly, Savannah, as the Sun Belt suburbs. So what does that mean? We've talked a little bit already about Georgia, the suburbs of Atlanta, the place that really could not just be a demographic shift that we've been talking about for several election cycles, but be a place that could really turn against President Trump. And that not only has huge implications for the presidential ticket, it also has implications for there are two Senate races, as we have walked through. One of them, Senator Perdue, a Republican, he's an incumbent. He's running against Jon Ossoff. If Jon Ossoff can get to 50% tonight, that's going to be a sign that Democrats are in for a very good night. Obviously, far too early to call that at this point, but that's what I'm going to be watching all through the night. That logic also applies to these other Sunbelt suburbs. Phoenix, Arizona is another one. Martha McSally running against Mark Kelly, who's a Democratic challenger. Many Republicans think that that race may already be gone for Martha McSally, the incumbent. And if that's the case, it's all about those suburbs of Phoenix. And then the big surprise, of course, tonight, Savannah, potentially in Texas. We don't always think about Texas as being driven by suburbs, but it really is. Houston, Dallas area places. There is a Senate race in Texas. John Cornyn, the Republican senator, is an incumbent there. We have expected him to do better than President Trump in Texas. It's one of actually only a few places where you have a Republican senator who's running ahead of the president. So some people, some Republicans I'm talking to who are pessimistic about Texas suggest that John Cornyn could hold on, but perhaps President Trump could have a rough night there in Texas. Obviously, of course, far too early to say with any certainty about how these are going so far. But those are the places that I think are really going to determine control of the Senate through the night.
Well, everything's bigger in Texas, Casey, including the turnout that we've seen so far, of the roughly 10 million votes, which is about 10% of all the early votes that have been cast so far.
All right, Chuck, a lot of folks watching tonight. Are we going to get an answer tonight? What's the road? How do we get there?
Well, by the way, watch the Texas turnout. If it's 17 million, that's what Democrats tell me they would need to actually pull that off. So watch that tonight. Well, I'm going to take you through our sort of how to watch tonight a little bit and this idea, what are we going to know and what aren't we going to know? Look, at the end of the day, we know that these three states are not going to be reporting tonight, at least. There's a chance Wisconsin could get a bunch of vote in before the Today Show, which is always my measurement here, before the Today Show. Right. Michigan and Pennsylvania, very unlikely. So let's, how do you want to watch the night? Well, we know we're going to see these early states here first, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. And let me just show you why they're so important to President Trump and why he really probably has to sweep the Sun Belt. Because if you go back and give the Clinton states here to Biden in our battleground map, and you go ahead and give Trump his states of Iowa and Ohio here, we're going to leave these three unchecked here. We'll go ahead and put that there, and we're going to go ahead and put Maine in blue here for now. And we're going to go, we have the ability to do this, split the Maine control, if you will. And we're going to go ahead and give Nebraska here for now, put it in the Biden column. So you can see everything we can do. And then here's the situation, though. If the president doesn't win these Sunbelt states, and any of them, if he doesn't win these Sunbelt states, and they're right now, we're going to put him in red like he did the last time. But if he just loses, as you can see here, if he just loses, if he doesn't get Florida, he doesn't get close. You've got Arizona, which would be a problem if that gets him there. If Wisconsin and Michigan end up blue, and they lean blue right now, you start to see where just one of these Sunbelt states starts to do it. And if he gets a second, then suddenly Pennsylvania no longer is here. But for the president, if he is able to hang on, and he hangs on, then look what we're staring at. We are staring at a one-state contest where we're all going to be wondering what Pennsylvania is about.
What are the early clues?
The early clues are going to be, to me, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Arizona. One flip, by Biden there, and suddenly the president's path gets really complicated. 2 flips, and we have an idea of who the next president's going to be.
All right. Chuck, we'll be watching. Those Sunbelt states are better at voting early and counting early, so we'll see. It might decide how long this night really is. We're going to take a quick break right here. Much more ahead. The latest results when we continue with Election Night 2020 in just a moment.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school,
what do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient, you're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back to Election Night 2020 on NBC News.
We've got some numbers coming in. Let's look at the Virginia presidential race. And right now, that's too early, but we can report that Biden is leading in Virginia.
Let's look at Georgia. It's a swing state this year. We don't usually say that. It's too early to call, but we're starting to get a few votes in. Let's go to South Carolina. Too early to call there as well.
In Vermont, we can project that Joe Biden is the winner in Vermont.
Yeah, that's a new call. Yeah, well, we just got that in. Yeah, but not a surprise, but yes. Okay, let's go to Rahima Ellis. She's in Philly, where, of course, the Democrats are really hoping on a high turnout to kind of break out what happens in other more rural parts of the state. Rahima, what are you seeing?
What we're seeing here, Savannah, is that right now in this Philadelphia area that we're in, the voting has been quiet because it was very heavy in days leading up to this. They got a lot of mail-in ballots that were brought into the state. As you know, so many people went out and online, stood in line in order to cast their ballots early. When we talked to people, we found out that one of the things that they were really concerned about here was COVID-19, which is one of the reasons why so many people mailed in their ballots. For the first time, they had over 400,000 mail-in ballots requested for this election, a presidential election, and they received more than 330,000 before this election day began. So that's why they think that they didn't have very long lines here. But in other counts of the parts of the state, they did have long lines. One of the things that's really important here is that they tell us that it is not likely they're going to be able to call this race for either candidate tonight, because the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania says they're going to count all of those mail-in ballots. And if they are properly postmarked tonight by 8 o'clock, they will be counted even up till Friday. Savannah?
All right, Rahima, thank you. And Chuck, you've been looking at those exit polls. What do you see in your tea leaves over there?
Well, we want to show you, look, a lot of the strength here, and I'm going to bring up we have some Georgia exit poll numbers among white voters here. And this is a key. When Democrats do well in southern states, they have to essentially perform better with some white voters. They have to get to the 30% mark. Here's what's interesting in Georgia. The last time, and you can see it here, the last time a Democrat carried Georgia was in 1992. It was Bill Clinton, which is also the last time that any Democrat got more than 30% of the white vote. Right now, Joe Biden is sitting at exactly 30% of the white vote. You can see 2004, 2016. So the last time it's been there, it's a magic number to watch there, that 30% mark. That is usually what Democrats need in Georgia, assuming they have the African-American turnout they need. And right now in Georgia, it looks like it. That is why right now Democrats are so bullish on Georgia.
And real quickly, until we have vote, we're talking exit polls. Those exit polls are including day of vote and also surveys conducted of early voters.
It is. And look, and we've seen this before. The exit polls can, overstate by a point or two. We were able to, as we see real returns come in, we match it, we're able to reweight it. There's always a chance that it's at 2 points. But the point is this: winning candidates, winning Democrats in states like Georgia get 30% of the white vote. Exit is saying that. Let's see what the real returns say.
All right, Chuck, thank you. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more NBC News Decision 2020 election night coverage in just a moment.
By mail,
early in person,
or on Election Day. Each state has its own set of rules for the way we cast our ballots.
Yes, it's a little confusing. That's why we have to figure it out now.
Take 15 minutes and plan your vote.
ASAP. In some places, the polls are already open. Go! Make sure your voice is heard.
Plan your vote. Plan your vote.
Plan your vote.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Welcome back. At bottom of the hour, we're going to get a poll closing in North Carolina. That's a biggie.
Yeah, 7:30 Eastern is when we should be getting that poll closing for North Carolina. This is the state that the Democratic governor ran afoul, of course, of the president over the Republican National Convention and COVID.
Yeah, and it's a Senate battleground, it's a presidential battleground, and it could tell the whole story tonight if we get a result.
And what we see very clearly from the exit polls, at least so far, is that there's a real split, a racial divide on what is the issue most important to the voters. For black voters, 48% say it's racial inequality. For white voters, 46% say it is the economy. They're exactly reversed.
North Carolina, by the way, is one of those states. There's not a lot of swing areas. It is margins. You're gonna hear that a lot from me.
Explain that. That's Chesapeake. You got to run
That's right.
up.
This isn't a county that vacillates between red and blue. These counties are big blue counties or big red counties. Red in the rural areas, blue in the urban areas. It's about running up the score, and each side is trying to run that up. In these key Sunbelt states, there's a lot more of that, particularly Georgia and North Carolina. So these are what we call margin states. So it's all about how much do you run up the score for Democrats in Charlotte, how much in the rural areas for Trump.
And they count the votes pretty quickly.
It's a fairly quick process, but it is a tight race.
All right.
Yeah.
We will be right back with more coverage after this.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Coming up on the bottom of the hour, we're going to get some key poll closings in a couple of minutes, including the all-important state of North Carolina, of Ohio, and West Virginia. That's just moments away, but we've already gotten some polls closed tonight, Georgia being one of them. This is a battleground this year. It's too early to call at this hour.
And Kentucky, South Carolina also too early to call right now, the race for president.
But let's look at what's happening in the race for president in Virginia. We are calling it too early to call. That's South Carolina. Here's Virginia. So we will continue to watch that. And let's talk about North Carolina. Chuck, I mean, this is going to be one of those states that might really tell the whole story tonight.
It is, and one of the big things is going to be, I think, African-American turnout. You know, if 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton lost the race by about 3 points, 49-46. After rounding. And when Barack Obama won it in 2008, he just had a bigger share of African-American voters. So the real question is going to be, did Joe Biden get an African-American turnout that looks more like the Obama-Biden?
Here's the numbers just came in from North Carolina. This is what we have right now. Too early to call, but our first numbers as the polls close in North Carolina. Ohio, too early to call as well.
We've got West Virginia closing as well. It's too early to call, but we've got the president in the lead as expected. So where does it shake out on that map? To 270 electoral votes. That's what's required to take the presidency, and we are still early in this night. Joe Biden getting 3 so far. Donald Trump with Indiana at 11.
Yeah, long road to 270, but certainly we've been watching Ohio. Joe Biden, late in the game, decided to put Ohio on his expanded map, so we'll see.
Look, the place to watch Ohio is going to be around Lake Erie. Those Lake counties, those are all used to be some Union Democrats. Donald Trump did really well, basically, from Toledo on one end all the way through. Sherrod Brown, when he won his re-election in 2018, got a bunch of those counties back. That's what we're going to be watching for tonight. Is Joe Biden looking like a Sherrod Brown Democrat, or is he going to look like a Hillary Clinton Democrat in Ohio?
And let me go to Casey Hunt on this, because Erie, Pennsylvania is one of those areas the president went to for a rally, but actually said, I believe, to the Erie voters, I didn't think I'd have to come here. I didn't think I'd have to push it so hard. But every vote in Pennsylvania is being fought for.
That's right, Savannah. In fact, he said, I didn't want to have to come here. I didn't want to have to, as you say, fight for it, which is not necessarily a traditional message from any political candidate to a group of people where you're standing there and you're asking for their votes. And Pennsylvania, of course, Joe Biden's original home state, his hometown of Scranton there, his boyhood home. And it has been a place where both candidates have visited over and over and over again. And to Chuck's point about that area along Lake Erie, you know, that also, I think, speaks to questions about whether Joe Biden can actually increase his support among white voters. Democrats have been losing support generally among white voters, and we've covered extensively all of those people, those blue-collar folks who maybe voted for Obama twice and then flipped and voted for Donald Trump. And could Joe Biden stem the bleeding there? And our exit polls are showing some early signs that it's possible that that's the case in places like Georgia as well. Now, that, of course, could also be suburban, and don't forget that the suburbs in states like Ohio and especially in Pennsylvania are also very important here, and that extends our conversation to suburban women. So those are still, some of the areas I think my sources are focusing on as I've been in touch with strategists throughout the early evening. If we're talking about Pennsylvania specifically, I would say Democrats are pretty optimistic that they're going to hit what they need to hit in terms of turnout and organization in Pennsylvania to get Joe Biden across the finish line there. Of course, everyone's still very nervous and reluctant to say that out loud until we get more concrete numbers, Savannah.
And remember, the results in Pennsylvania in 2016 were a hair 40,000 votes made the difference there. So that's why every vote counts. Let's go to the Senate races now. As we said, North Carolina's polls just closed. This is a hot race. This is an endangered incumbent. Tom, tell us the Republican. Too early to call this vote, but we'll be watching it. West Virginia, it's too early to call, but Shelley Moore Capito, who's the incumbent, is leading at this hour and has been leading in the polls throughout.
Let's show you where that leads us with the Senate right now. There is the breakdown. Remember, Democrats need perhaps 4, maybe 3 to gain control.
Well, I'm excited because Chuck's got a county breakdown map, which I know things are getting good now.
I do. Well, look, I want to just show you something here. This was the last time Democrats carried North Carolina. This is Barack Obama's winning map here. And I want to pay particularly attention here in the Fayetteville area and some of these counties. You see this block of blue counties here. All right, and let me take you to 2016. You can see some of those blue counties went away. So let me just show you what this means when we talk about a margin state, as I was talking about. So let me give you to some of those counties here. Let me get this off of here, and this is the type of stuff. So right now, Robeson County, we don't have any vote here. But here's where I can show you about why turnout matters. So in 2016, Donald Trump carried Robeson County, all right? But if you look at here, when Barack Obama carried it, he carried it with 58 and 57% of the vote. This county is basically almost 50% African American. It is a turnout county. As you can see, when the African American vote doesn't turn out, that county goes red. When the African-American vote turns out, that county goes blue. And so this is what I mean when I was talking about, we're talking about margin counties here. So in order for this to go blue tonight, you're going to need to see a block of blue down here, not just a little bit of blue in these key counties with heavy African-American vote in it.
All right, Chuck, let's go to Kelly O'Donnell right now in Columbus, Ohio, to set the scene there. Kelly?
Well, Lester, right now, a couple of minutes past the closing of polls, all those early votes are actually being tabulated. And sources that I've been speaking with say expect those to go strongly for Joe Biden. But that will give perhaps a skewed perspective of the night. Both elected officials, senior elected officials in both parties say they expect Biden to have big margins in the cities. But the president's strength, they believe, is in the more rural areas, where they argue that they've been able to identify and turn out new voters favorable to President Trump, but that vote will probably come in later tonight. So one of the key questions will be watching what may be early returns for Biden, and can the president chip away at that and overtake it? The Trump campaign believes they've got to win Ohio. No Republicans won the White House without it. Democrats think it's within reach for Joe Biden, and they say look to the suburbs for where Joe Biden, they believe, has performed better than Hillary Clinton from 4 years ago, better than President Trump. So Ohio is a lot about history, and in this case, it's about new expectations. So it will take some patience tonight, but they expect to have votes coming in soon. But it's about watching the pace of the night, and can the president overtake what they expect to be that early Joe Biden lead. Both Biden and President Trump campaigned here, not as much as some of the other battlegrounds, but Ohio is critical to get to that piece that's needed for 270. 18 electoral votes are on the line here. Lester?
All right, Kelly, thank you.
Well, let's turn to Florida. I can't believe we haven't talked very much about Florida tonight.
I know. Well, let me show you what we got in Florida right now. We are. And I'm going to just show you what we got. A lot of vote in, okay? We got over 7 million vote. And Florida's one of those that does its early vote. In fact, let's show off our toys here, as I said we were going to do, right? As you can see, the orange is early and absentee. You see the same day vote. People that voted today is here in yellow. And then we have a bunch of gray vote here. We expect nearly 12 million voters. So we shall see. So we think there's another, 3.5 to 4 million, maybe 4.5 million more votes to go. So anyway, just something to look there. So how are we watching Florida tonight? You don't win Florida the same way twice. All right, that is something that I think I want to remind people. But let me just start here with what we're, all night tonight, I'll do these, what I call Trump Dem counties. And what these were is these were counties that Trump carried in 16, but the major Democratic statewide candidate in 18 carried. Well, in the state of Florida, that was Duval, that was Seminole, and that was Pinellas. This was the governor's race there, Andrew Gillum, which was a, granted it's a race they lost, but these are 3 important counties. I can tell you this, the Biden folks think if they can win Pinellas and Duval and Seminole, it can make up for some ground there. So why don't we take a look and see what our numbers are? Here's Pinellas. This is the home of St. Petersburg. Right now, very narrow Biden. So you can see what we were looking at over the last 3 election cycles. This is the toy that I love the best, the fact I could do this so quickly here. As you can see here, Trump carried this county. This is one of the few bellwether counties that there's left. Most things are margins, as I've been saying here. Obama narrowly carried it by a bigger number, as you can see there in 08. And so far right now, 89%, so we think there's not much vote out, but Biden, a very narrow lead. All that tells me,
as it comes.
By the way, all that tells me is it's going to take forever to call Florida. But let me look at a couple of others. We want to talk about Seminole. Well, Seminole right now, this is a county, again, that Donald Trump carried 4 years ago. And you can see here, this is a county that has been moving towards the Democrats very carefully. And you can see here, this Obama overperformed, but you saw McCain and Romney and Trump all carried it. But it's starting to shift a little bit. It's diversifying. Seminole's north of Orlando, happens to be where my mother lives. And right now, he's winning Seminole. That is a very good sign. But this is potentially the trouble spot for Joe Biden. And it's Miami-Dade. As you can see, we already have 84% in. This is a terrible margin for him, 54%. Not
Explain
good.
that. It's the Latino vote in South Florida.
And it's a different type of Latino vote. It's the Cuban-American vote. It's the Venezuelan-American vote. But, I mean, you can see here, Obama's lowest number was 58, and he did carry the state. Biden is not matching that. Obama got 62 out of here. Look, what Hillary Clinton did in Miami-Dade 4 years ago is why, I don't know, if you recall 4 years ago, I'm going, oh, my goodness, look at these numbers she's hitting here. She's going to win Florida. And then, of course, Donald Trump overwhelmed with turnout in some of the more rural counties. But if Joe Biden, he's not getting close to this. This is 10. This could be the reason he doesn't win Florida, because Donald Trump has made it. If there is one constituency group in the state of Florida that he is focused on, it is Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans. They did all sorts of policy rollouts there. This was one of the few times where they used the power of the presidency in an official capacity, essentially to try to carry the state of Florida, overperform in Miami-Dade. So we shall see. Again, nobody wins Florida the same way twice. So there is not to say Biden can't do this if he overperforms in some of these northern counties, which we're seeing him do. But this is a potential trouble spot right now that we're following when it comes to these Miami-Dade
Kristen
numbers.
Welker has spent a fair amount of time in Florida recently. Kristen, Joe Biden making an appeal and appeared to be doing well among older voters.
Well, that's right. Older voters, independent voters, Lester. And I just heard from a campaign official who said, look, they feel good about the turnout in Broward County. But to Chuck's point about Miami-Dade, I have been talking to Democrats about that area for the past week or so. They have been concerned about the turnout in Miami-Dade. And that's why you saw former President Obama campaigning there over the weekend, urging voters not to be complacent, to get out and vote. Now, I spent some time in Florida last week, and I can tell you that the electorate there was quite energized and quite divided. For every Biden voter who I interviewed a Trump voter. So you really feel on the ground there that this is the battleground of battleground states. What we also saw in Florida, Lester, was really a tale of two campaigns. You had President Trump and Joe Biden on Thursday holding these competing rallies in Tampa, which is a swing district, and you had President Trump with this massive crowd, very little social distancing, very few masks. On the other hand, Joe Biden in the same area with a drive-in socially distant rally. Very different messaging on COVID-19. Biden thinking that could be the crux and the key to this campaign, Lester.
All right, Kristen, thanks very much.
Let's turn to Casey Hunt. She's got some reporting on Duval County, which is, I guess, the northeastern part of the state. What are you hearing?
Yeah, Chuck was just talking about this. It's the area around Jacksonville, and I was actually just exchanging notes with a couple sources about what's going on there, because some Democrats have noticed that the early results seem to be stronger for Biden than maybe anticipated. But I'm also told by others who've been tracking this data very closely that they're not sure that Biden's going to pull it out. So we just want to be, I think, I would urge a little bit of caution in terms of looking at the returns there. The other thing I would highlight, though, Savannah, is Broward County. For all of the trouble that Chuck correctly highlighted that President Trump former Vice President Joe Biden is potentially having in Miami-Dade County, Democrats are really paying attention to Broward, which is just one county to the north, where we could see those suburban women who have been so frustrated with President Trump really play a pretty significant role. There's also, of course, questions, as you were talking about with Kristen, about seniors in that spot. So So if the turnout there is very, very strong, if Democrats really show up in the numbers that some are hopeful we could see, Broward County is one place where they're hoping they can counterbalance what's going on in Miami-Dade just to the south.
Right. Andrew, you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, just to weigh in on Miami-Dade, the real problem, I think, early on is labeling Joe Biden as a socialist. And the fact that the Biden campaign was very slow to respond to that, also didn't canvass. Because of COVID, they were not canvassing. The Trump campaign has been canvassing in Florida for 3 years. The Biden campaign only came in recently. That's why they sent Barack Obama in twice in just the last couple of weeks, the last week. And in fact, it may not be enough to overcome that advantage. And also the policies that Chuck was referring to, policies on Cuba and Venezuela, coming out of the State Department, they have been just pouring the stuff out to attract those Latin American people who are tied to their home countries.
And the socialism label, you're saying, kind of stuck to Joe Biden harder there with that particular community of voters?
And he's going to have to overcome that for the rest of Florida, by the rest of Florida.
Chuck, is this a good
seniors
point?
There as well.
Is this a good point to take a look at where the vote we're looking at is coming from? Because we were warned going into this that numbers may not appear, you know, the image may be different than what is actually happening.
For instance, in Florida, we're seeing everything is going to get thrown in. And I've got Duval up now, which is Jacksonville. That's up here in the northeast corner. And this is, look, Duval is a swing county. It's been a swing county that has tilted R almost most of the time. And lately, Andrew Gillum carried it. And you're seeing here, this is a little bit of a gap. 4 points is a bit. There's not. What's amazing here, I've just struck by the turnout. Look, turnout was almost identical, if you will, from 12 to 16. The Romney number, the Trump number out of Duval is coming here. But, I mean, look at now. We're sitting already. Trump has more vote than any Republican's ever gotten in Duval, and he may lose it. And Biden's got a whopping 250,000. But one of the things that I've noticed that could help out Joe Biden if he's struggling in Miami-Dade is that, just very carefully, you can see he's improving on Clinton's margins by 1 or 2 points in important counties along here. I'm going down the West Coast here because this is some Republicans, a lot of college-educated Republicans down here, snowbirds. And I'm just going to throw these counties. Watch the Clinton number, watch the Biden percentage, just so you can see here. He's just slightly improving on her by 2 points almost across the board. That's a 3.5-point gain there in Charlotte County. And this is here, Lee County. This is Fort Myers. As you can see, he's improved by 3.5 points. This is how Joe Biden can overcome that poor turnout, if you will, for him in Miami-Dade. If he's shaving 2 or 3 points in every other county, then suddenly you're in a situation where that's how you, again, it's my point. Nobody wins Florida the same way twice.
I think that makes your point. You never put that puzzle together the same way twice. We'll get to your mom's house in the next break, but we're going to take a little moment here. A look ahead to the night's biggest wave of poll closings. It's coming up, including Florida and Pennsylvania, just moments away. Stay with us right here on Election Night.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school,
What do you guys think? We're excited?
or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
So imagine this, Florida, complicated and has us scratching our heads. Who would have thought? Let's bring in Hallie Jackson at the White House for more on that. Hallie?
That's one thing you might have been able to bet on before this night, Lester, if you will. I can tell you that based on some conversations with sources and our team's conversations inside the Trump orbit, there are advisors who are feeling good so far, although we note it's still early, about what Chuck was talking about with the rest of the team just before the break. Those numbers specifically in Miami-Dade County. And there are those inside the president's orbit who are really crediting the work being done with specifically Latino voters. This is an area that the president has been talking about publicly for weeks now. It's a place at his campaign. In almost every discussion that I've had with campaign advisors, we'll talk about how they are trying to boost turnout specifically among Latino and Latina voters because of Florida here, for example. There's this ad that has come out now in the past couple of weeks that the president and his team continue to refer to. They think it's resonating inside the Latino community. And then there is what Andrea was referencing, too, the idea that the attacks on Joe Biden as potentially a socialist in the eyes of the Trump campaign as they're going after the former vice president has been effective. This is a message that for all of the perhaps lack of message discipline that President Trump himself may have had over the last 10 months or so, the campaign itself has been very focused on that particular attack line. We saw it at the convention here at the White House not 2 months ago, and we've seen it on the campaign trail consistently at the president's rallies. Lester?
All right, Hallie Jackson, thanks.
All right, let's go to Chuck. You're still looking at Florida.
I
Volusia
did.
County, that's a big one.
Well, I did the West Coast, so I thought I'd do some of the Atlantic Coast here. Volusia is Daytona. And look, Volusia used to be, if you remembered Florida back in 2000, Volusia was a blue county at one time. It's been a swing county shifting red. And again, another evidence, Joe Biden, 2 points better than Clinton again. And you just keep going down on these Gold Coast counties. And again, I emphasize this Biden number is improving. What it tells me when the Trump number doesn't move, it's the third party vote. And remember, we've talked about that. One of the bigger differences between 16 and 20 is no Gary Johnson. You know, you look here, Gary Johnson got 3% in this county and in Brevard. Where's that 3% all going? It looks like it's almost all going to Biden. Just think about that tonight when you think about the other states. If we're seeing a similar pattern here of third party vote, suddenly basically lumping into what the old Clinton number was, and that's your new Biden number. And as you see here, sorry, no, the 3. I saw you squint.
No, I'm squinting at the Trump in 2016, though. It says 181,000 votes, but he's got 195. So his number got better, too.
His number got better. But again, Biden's number is getting better faster.
All right. Okay. Chuck, thanks. We're going to take a break. Be back with more election night coverage in just a moment.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Welcome back. As you can see, we are less than 5 minutes away from a whole host of poll closings in the East. 16 states plus D.C., including some of the big ones. Florida will also get Pennsylvania's poll closing. But Florida has already dumped a lot of vote tonight. We've already seen a lot of the results. But what we know is it's tight. Go figure. Florida.
And one of the important Sunbelt states that Chuck and others have been talking about that are going to be really key to Biden's path.
Florida's going to Florida.
Yeah.
Florida's going to Florida.
All right. We want to give you a quick update of your local races now. We'll be right back. Top of the hour with those all-important 8 o'clock poll closings. You're watching Decision 2020 on NBC. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
from every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
and in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
And we're coming up 8 o'clock on the East Coast, 5 o'clock in the West, and there are a bunch of polls about to close. 16 states plus Washington, D.C., including a couple of key battlegrounds just a few seconds away. We do have some results in Kentucky. The president is the projected winner. Not a surprise there. Let's go to some other states.
Yeah, Georgia, it's too early to call. North Carolina, too early to call. Ohio, also too early to call.
Now let's look at South Carolina. Also too early to call. Big Senate race there going on as well.
All right, and Biden leading in Virginia right now. That's too early to call.
All right, we await those 8 o'clock poll closings, but we continue to watch Florida. Ironically, Florida's about to close its polls, but it's already reported out
They do
the
that,
majority
right.
of its vote.
We see a majority of the vote. And to tell you here, you're just looking at it, and we know what's coming in. It's the panhandle vote. We know the panhandle is going to be a Trump strength. Right now, Florida, I think I'd rather be Donald Trump right now with Florida than Joe Biden. But again, I'm going to call it, it's margins versus Miami.
All right.
Bottom line, margins versus Miami.
All right, we've got the 8 o'clock poll closings now. We can look at there is Florida, too close to call. Note 82% expected vote in there. In Pennsylvania, too early to call. No surprise, that one's going to take a while.
Yeah, way too early. New Hampshire, also too early to call. Just a few votes in. In New Jersey, Joe Biden is the projected winner at this hour. And in Maryland, we've got Joe Biden as the projected winner.
NBC projecting Biden the winner in Massachusetts as well. Also in Delaware, Biden wins. Biden also the projected winner in D.C.
All right, and Oklahoma will go for the president. In Illinois, we are calling it too early, but Biden is leading in Illinois. He's led in the polls. Connecticut, same thing. Too early, but Biden is leading.
Here's what's happening in Alabama right now. Too early to call. Too early in Maine as well. Same story in Mississippi, Missouri. Biden leading in Rhode Island, but that one's too early to call. Trump leading in Tennessee.
All right, so where does that put us? We've just made some calls. Here we go. Let's get to the map of 270. That's how you get elected president in this country, as we show Tennessee, but I think we can roll the map. And now we've got a few more numbers to report. Joe Biden, not surprisingly, carrying those big cities in the east, and we see Donald Trump in some of his strong red territory. Chuck, this is unfolding as expected.
Nobody's won a road game yet.
Yeah.
You know, Pat Riley used to say back in those 7-game series, you know, a series doesn't begin until somebody wins a road game. Well, a series doesn't be an election night doesn't begin until we flip a red state blue or a blue state red.
And we get to the battlegrounds, and we still await those because they're just so tight.
They are. Let me go over to Florida, and let's see if we've got some of these new county numbers in here. And I just want to reset it just to see if we're going to start getting some of this vote in, if they're going to dump it fast. We're not. But look, as you can see here, let's reset it. Let's just remind people of Florida's tendencies here, right? Here we are in 2008. As you can see, nobody ever wins Florida in a blowout. Obama got 51, 50. Trump got 49. So as you can see, this 3-point, that was a landslide for Obama in 2008. But as you can see here, these margins are always pretty close, pretty close. But I'll tell you, and so this is good news for Biden that he's now pulled in the lead, because if we go back to my county maps here, again, we know the vote that's coming in. This is heavy Trump country here. There's a few African-American counties in here that will produce some good vote for for Biden. But for the most part, that's going to be a load of vote out of there. So look, I'm going to go back to what I said before. We're sitting here. Biden's biggest problem is Miami right now. Let's go back. Let's see what the vote stands right now. He's dropped below 54%, 86% in. We're looking at 53.9 to 45.5. That's the bad news here for Joe Biden. He's performing 10 points less. The question is whether all of this little improvements for Joe Biden, whether it's a point here or 2 points there or 3 points there in these various counties. Can that make up for 10 points in Miami? It's Miami versus the margins. So
is this at all a bellwether to what we'll see in the other Sun Belts?
No, I don't, because this is a unique.
This
was a unique Miami issue. Miami is Miami. You know, Miami is, some would say, is Hong Kong, right? The rest of Florida is sort of is kind of connected. Miami's its own thing. It's its own entity. I would say this: if this is the way Biden loses Florida, he probably can feel better about what's happening up north, because many of these other counties perform more like these Midwestern states, right? And, you know, I always joke, Florida, you know, basically the Midwest is down here. You've got the Northeast retirees are down in the Atlantic coast. So the piece of the entire battleground shows up in Florida. So if you're looking for a silver lining on the Biden side of the aisle, you can say, well, all of this other stuff makes you think you should do well in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, for what it's worth.
Let's bring in Casey into this conversation, because, Casey, one of the criticisms of the Biden campaign, and some of it was loud down in Florida from Biden supporters, was that he was not doing enough to get out the Latino vote in South Florida. We mentioned the Venezuelan Americans, the Cuban Americans, and it seems like that is coming to pass in Miami-Dade.
Savannah, that's absolutely true. And there were Democrats who were trying to sound the alarm on this. And remember, this socialism-related message, it's something that President Trump has literally been pushing for almost the entirety of his administration. I've sat through State of the Union addresses where he uses this term. I mean, this is something that he really focused on very much. And I think that not only was the goal here to try and do what we're seeing play out, apparently, which was, win over more of those voters, but, cynics would say, and some Democrats will say, that it was also potentially a strategy of trying to convince these voters not to show up to the polls at all, to become demoralized about this, because this message was potentially attached to the Democrat Joe Biden. Of course, Biden's team focused much more, frankly, on the rebuild the blue wall strategy, and that's, of course, a set of states we've hardly turned to yet tonight: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where our conversation will inevitably turn later. But it's possible that they're paying the price for the decision in Miami-Dade County.
All right, we want to bring into the conversation now former Democratic Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill and conservative columnist and editor of National Review, Rich Lowry. Both are NBC News political contributors. Claire, let me start with you in this idea. I think Andrea brought up this notion that Biden had been painted with a socialist brush very early on, and it was hard to get rid of. Do you buy into that?
I think it may resonate more in some of the communities in Miami-Dade and in Florida, namely those Cuban Americans. But if you look at the gauntlet that Trump has to run, he may get by Florida, but he's got big ones ahead of him yet. He's got to get through North Carolina. He's got to get through Georgia. He's got to get through the really tough one, which is Pennsylvania, before he can think about getting reelected. So it's going to be a long night. It looks like Florida is not going to be decisive one way or the other for a while. But, everybody was hoping it would be over early by winning Florida big. You can take a deep breath, grab a bottle of water, and hang in there. It's going to be a while.
All right, let me turn to Rich Lowry. Rich, like me, I know you hang on every word that Chuck Todd says. And were you watching when he started looking at some of those red counties in Florida where Biden seems to be overperforming Hillary Clinton? We know that obviously Trump has done well enough in Miami-Dade. Do you see any warning signals in those red counties in Florida that may portend in other states around the country?
We'll see. I mean, it seems clear one of the storylines of the night will be this shifting within the Republican coalition we saw in 2016, where Trump was shedding support in more traditional Republican affluent suburbs and then picking up support in working class areas, some of which were more traditionally Democrat. So it seems like he's going to lose more of the affluent suburbs. Can he make it up with more of his, turning out even more of his voters this time around? But Florida, if he pulls Florida out, and Claire's right, this is necessary for Trump. It's not for Biden. Trump has to have this. You can come up with theoretical scenarios where he wins without Florida, but it's very likely not going to happen. But it'll be a story of an incredibly robust state operation in Florida that focused on the Latino vote like a laser beam and with the idea that they could actually win over Latinos, especially Latino men, and make a difference in a really close election. And it seems as though that theory might be proving out tonight down there.
Yeah, they had an aggressive turnout operation, the Trump campaign did as well, and turned out new voters of its own. We're watching as these results come in. Florida polls just closed a few moments ago. Kerry Sanders is in St. Petersburg, Florida, Pinellas County, which is a real crossroads county, Kerry, and a real bellwether there.
Absolutely. You know, they say as goes Pinellas County, so goes the state, because in the last 40 years, really since 1980, this county has called the election for who is the president-elect. And so a lot of eyes really on Pinellas County, and the technology is pretty sufficient here to tell us what's going on. Just remember, as we look at this, just because somebody's registered in a party doesn't mean they necessarily voted in that party. But as we take a look at the information that's being put up right now with a 79% turnout of voters here, which is really quite dramatic, we can see that the Democrats have voted with 207,000 plus, the Republicans 213,000. So there was a greater Republican turnout here, especially in a county where it's basically even between Republicans and Democrats. Now look at that yellow line. This is really the most important one that we're looking at. 133,000 plus voters with no party affiliation. Those are likely the ones who are going to make the decision, not only here in Pinellas County, but across the state. 27% of Florida voters have no party affiliation. And drilling down, as the campaigns have done, is they were trying to woo those voters 65 and plus in age, those non-party affiliated voters. Those are the ones in 2016 who significantly lent and went towards Trump, giving him the election. And the belief is that that is the same group that will have an impact again in Florida with this election for president. One of the things to note that you all have been talking about with Miami-Dade and the Cuban American population, just consider for a moment as we look at this, we have 930,000 Cuban Americans of voting age, primarily in South Florida, but up along the I-4 corridor, sort of Orange County, Osceola, we're talking about in the Orlando area, we have 875,000 Puerto Ricans. They tend to be Democrats. We have the Republicans who are the Cuban Americans who are primarily Republicans. So as the night progresses, it will be interesting to see whether that Puerto Rican vote winds up in some way canceling out some of that Cuban American vote. All eyes on Florida, though, as you guys have been saying here.
Yeah, Kerry, and I'm sitting here looking, 87% in statewide already there.
Well, look, I mean, look, here's the thing. We have 1.5 million votes remaining, but I'll be honest, as Kerry was talking, Trump's lead went from 0.6%, and I've just been watching it go. As you can see here, it's now jumped to more than a percentage point. And again, this is because all of this red is coming in. And I'll tell you, the more I look at this, the more it doesn't, things are getting better for Donald Trump. Let me just take you to one county that was a Trump-Obama county that we cared about a lot here, and it was St. Lucie County. This is St. Lucie, I believe, is Vero Beach, right around there, up the Gold Coast. This is a county that Obama carried. So when you win Florida, Obama carried it. Trump narrowly carried it, and he won Florida. As you can see here, Trump's holding his number on this one. Biden's improved. It's another one of these 2-point improvements. But the question is, it's not looking to me as if the numbers in this margins, that he's closing the margins enough to make up for. And the big one, we're gonna look at this and we'll see what the margin is right now. Yeah. Right, you look at 117,000. I could probably find the vote right here in Miami-Dade. If you just look 2 years ago, she won Miami-Dade by almost 300,000 votes. Right. Right now, Biden's only winning Miami-Dade by 28 and 60, 88,000 votes. All right, think about that. 300,000, 88,000. So he's got, and she lost the state. So he's got to find more than 220. He's got to find some 300,000 extra votes in all these margins, if not 500,000 extra votes. I'm just saying, Florida looks like an uphill climb for Joe Biden.
And let's not forget, Barack Obama spent a lot of time in Florida here in the last couple of weeks.
Yes, he did. I think a lot of questions are going to be asked, though, to go back to, did they hear the calls of Miami-Dade enough? Look, the Biden campaign will get criticized if they're not carrying Georgia or North Carolina. The criticism about their Florida strategy will either amp up or down depending on how well they do in neighboring Georgia and up the coast in North Carolina.
All right, and we just projected Tennessee going to the president. No surprise there. Donald Trump, the winner of the 11 electoral votes there.
Kristen Welker, let's bring you into this Florida conversation. If we go back to the beginning of the evening and Chuck and his path to victory, it didn't seem to loom as large or as important to Joe Biden. Had they already kind of figured they had other paths around Florida?
They absolutely have, Lester, and I think that's really the key. Look, I just heard from a Democrat in Florida who's very close to the Biden campaign who acknowledges that this is really an uphill battle at this point, watching these numbers come in. But I've also heard from Biden campaign officials who say they still feel good about the night because they have several paths that do not include Florida, that do rely on Midwestern states. That blue wall that Hillary Clinton was not able to hold back in 2016, that vice president campaigned so aggressively in Michigan, Wisconsin. So those are the states that they're really turning to and focused on. And they say they feel good about. They feel good about the turnout, in the suburban areas that they will need in order to carry that state. And so that's really where their focus has shifted at this point. And look, I've been talking to the Biden campaign and top Democrats about Florida for quite some time. He visited 4 times. So he did make a real push for the state. They, of course, want to win Florida, but again, they have multiple other paths that do not include it, that in addition to those Midwestern states that I just mentioned would include North Carolina and Georgia, and so that is where their focus is going to be at this hour. Lester.
Kristen Welker, thank you. We're back after a short break with more election results. Stay with us.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back. Election night here in the U.S. and standing by live for us is Florida Senator, former Governor, Republican Rick Scott. Senator, good to see you, and I'm sure you're watching those returns in your home state as closely as we are. How do you feel at this moment? Do you feel you're ready to say this is going to go Trump's way tonight in Florida?
Absolutely. Look at the big key is Miami-Dade. I've always said Trump was going to do well with the Hispanic vote, and he did in Miami-Dade. It's very important. It was very important to my wins. I won the Hispanic vote in all 3 of my races. Trump did very well with the Hispanic vote. You can't do as badly as Biden did in Miami and expect to win statewide. So the Panhandle is going to continue to come in. It's going to come in big for President Trump, and I think he's going to have a bigger win tonight than he did back in 2016. And by the way, Trump's on the right side of the issues for Florida. We don't want taxes to go up. We want somebody that's going to stand up against the Castro regime and Maduro. We want somebody that is going to focus on our law enforcement, the economy. Those are things that Floridians care about. And so that's why Trump's going to win. And by the way, the Democrats didn't have a grassroots effort. They didn't have a great grassroots effort down here. This whole race.
And Senator, that's your view of Florida. What about the other Sun Belt states? Is Florida a one-off, or do you see a similar trend potentially in some of those other states?
Well, I don't follow them as well. I've been really focused on making sure we keep a Republican Senate. So I hope that David Perdue can win tonight, and then hope we have a good runoff for the second seat in Georgia. I think Lindsey Graham's going to have a big win. I think there's a good chance that Tom Tillis can win now. I think we're going to have a good night for Republican senators because, again, we've got great candidates and we're on the right side of the issues for the Americans.
Are there any counties that surprised you tonight, Senator Scott? Anything where you thought that the president would do better or that Joe Biden would do better other than Miami-Dade, which we just discussed?
Well, I think if you look at the numbers, we don't have the final numbers for Pinellas and Hillsborough. I think Joe Biden did a little bit better there than a lot of people thought. I think the big thing is probably Pinellas and Hillsborough, where Biden did a little bit better, it appears, than people thought. But he did so much worse in Miami that it's hard to come back from what happened to him in Miami. It's really the key to how I won my races. Is you got to get the Hispanic vote out, and you got to get the Hispanic vote out for you. And that's what President Trump did. I put up an ad to try to help President Trump get the vote out. And today, you saw Republicans came out significantly for him. And so it's just, big turnout. And it was in this case, I think it's going to be a big night for Donald Trump in Florida. All
right. Well, Senator Scott, thanks so much for talking to us. Good to have you on.
Thank you, sir.
Nice seeing you.
Honestly, there's not anybody who is more aware of how you win Florida in a tight race. Rick Scott, 3 races in the last decade, decided by percentage.
Let me just pause a second and note that we have this Senate call from Kentucky. Mitch McConnell, the incumbent, will hold on against Amy McGrath.
All right, and we'll also have another call from West Virginia. President Trump will take it as expected.
All right, we will take a break and be back with more of NBC's Decision 2020 election night coverage.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
To NBC News 2020 election coverage. We have got another call that's in the state of Connecticut, and when NBC News projects Joe Biden as the winner in Connecticut, not a big surprise there.
The votes are rolling in. We're looking at Ohio now. It was a battleground for years and years, but it wasn't in 2016. Trump took it by 8, I believe.
Trump took it by 8 points.
Exit polls that are interesting in terms of
we
demographics.
I mean, look, I know people are watching the raw returns come in, and I had the governor, Mike DeWine, said, hey, the Democratic numbers will be high early, Republican numbers come in, but he thought it was going to be close. The exit polls indicate that. And look at the suburban and urban and rural splits here. You know, Trump's vote in 2016, he did, it was sort of 38% of it was from the urban area. Well, we've seen while he's increased his margin, he's increased his vote share in rural counties in Ohio, he's decreased his share in suburban and in urban. So the question is, again, everything is a margin game here. Now, if you're Joe Biden, you'd rather trade suburban votes for rural votes, suburban counties for rural counties. There's just more raw vote there. Question is if it's enough. We've seen some suburban white vote has dipped 7 points from 4 years ago, and Hillary Clinton lost it by 8. Ohio's going to be close.
All right, Andrew told us to watch those suburban women, and so we will. But we got to take a brief pause in the action now. More election night results to come. You're watching Decision 2020 on NBC. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back. Election night 2020. Let's show you where things stand now. Too close to call in Florida. You can see the numbers right there. North Carolina also too early to call in North Carolina.
Polls have closed in Ohio. It is too early to call. We've seen some interesting exit polls so far. Pennsylvania, that's going to take a long time. It is far too early to call that one. And in Georgia, this is a race that Democrats are pinning their hopes on, hoping to turn that red state blue this year, but it's too early to call.
South Carolina, it is too early to call. And in Virginia, the presidential race too early, but Biden still hanging on to a lead there. Go to Andrea Mitchell right now. Andrea.
Well, one of the important factors that Joe Biden was counting on was reaching out to seniors, having a big advantage with seniors on the coronavirus. But interestingly, in the exit polls, it shows that the economy was a more important issue than the coronavirus, and that Donald Trump was given better marks for handling the economy than Joe Biden. So still, the economy was the most important factor, which is seniors, which may be surprising, may be very important in Florida, also in Pennsylvania, which has a lot of senior citizens.
Yeah, that could be a telltale exit poll for sure. Here we are saying Arkansas is up. Too early to call. The poll just closed there. And our map to 270. Let's throw it up there as we turn to Chuck. You see where it stands, Biden with the lead, but boy, it's early in the night. What do you got your eye on?
Well, look, let me just run through all of the big states we care about. Not much in Pennsylvania's in, but you want to see what little bit is trickling in. And here, this is what I'm always curious about. We all are. Okay, our orange and our yellow. Boy, I can barely see it there. You know what that means? We got a long way to go in Pennsylvania. So let's, there's a lot of work to do in Pennsylvania. But let me take you over to next door, Ohio here. We told you before the break that there was some evidence in the exit poll. There's no doubt Biden is improving. Governor Mike DeWine said to me today on air, hey, essentially the first half of the vote should be Dem leaning. The second half should be R leaning. Look, I like to mess around with the Eries. We got Erie County. Erie County is going to be important in Pennsylvania, and Erie County could be telling here, too. Right now, and it's only half the vote in, you see that Joe Biden is winning it. But you can see why I care about Erie County. When Obama carried Ohio, he carried Erie County. When Trump carried Ohio, he carried Erie County. So, look, along the lake here, and I told you, along these lake counties, this is where Trump cleaned up. This is where Biden has to improve. Halfway through, don't pop any champagne corks if you're the Democrats here, but clearly Ohio much more competitive. Let me take you down to North Carolina right now, another state we're watching. More than 60% of the vote is in. What are we up to? 62 here. And I was talking about margins. Biden had a bad day in Miami-Dade. He's got a really good day in Raleigh and in the triangle here in Wake County. Let me show you something here. You see this split 82% in, 65-33. Let me show you Wake County over the last 3 cycles. As you can see here, Joe Biden, Wake County, this is Research Triangle. You guys know this. This is, hotbed, a lot of college-educated suburban voters here. And as you can see, this is a case where Joe Biden's outperforming his former running mate by a big-time margin. He's already got a ton of vote here. He's got almost double the vote of Trump here. And as you can see, Clinton only got 100,000 advantage there. So already big margins there. By the way, the story is the same in Mecklenburg here, which is Charlotte. I'll show you, as you can see here, he's just already overperforming big time Clinton and Obama. So when you look at what's going on in North Carolina, again,
show us a red county, because you're telling us this election is going to come down county by county.
That's
Who
right.
runs up the score in
well,
their
look,
counties?
and I always like to spend time out here in these more rural counties. These are big Trump counties, so we can see, is he hitting his numbers here, right? Biden, 3 points better. Okay, I'm going to go here, Henderson County. Again, rural county. Again, this is Biden, 8 points better. 78% in. Keep going down over here in this part of North Carolina, Rutherford County, another one, Biden improving by 3 points. This is the story across the board. And again, I do want to point out, and it's right down here. Look at this. I worried that my board wasn't going to let me write all the way down here on the edge.
Continue to the next.
Anyway, yeah, that didn't work out very well. But I swear to God, there's a 2% number here. I mean, it is amazing here that you're seeing that. Andrew's brought it up. I mean, that's Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
You're saying that there was a third-party vote that drew votes from Clinton in 2016. We don't have that same third-party vote this time.
No, we don't.
This is head-to-head, and it's a whole different
Let's just take a look at Florida and check back in. And as you can see, the lead keeps growing for Donald Trump. So this is not looking like, yes, there's plenty of vote left. Let's look at our gray space here. Still got 1 million votes, so you can't sit here and call anything when you're separated by 225,000 votes here, 1 million votes, but you guys can do the math. Joe Biden's got to win a lot of those 1 million votes to make up a 226,000 vote deficit here. Florida is looking a little red tonight.
All right.
Let's bring in Kate Snow and talk a little bit. Go back to Pennsylvania if we can right now. Kate, you've spent a lot of time there. This is a place that we saw a lot of Obama voters break for Trump last time around, and then some second thoughts from some of those voters. You tapped into it. I tapped into it in my visit there last week. Describe the dynamics at play in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so I was in Western Pennsylvania, which I think is important to note right off, Lester, because Pennsylvania is a complicated state. It's not all one kind of voter. Where I was over by Pittsburgh, I was in Beaver County, which is northwest of Pittsburgh, right along the county borders the Ohio border, and it has the Ohio River running right through it. That was steel country. That was a place where people had union jobs. They worked in the steel mills up until the 70s and into the 80s when those steel mills started going away. And what I found there is a lot of voters who said, look, I was a Democrat by tradition. My parents were Democrats. My grandparents were Democrats. But in recent years, those Democrats, even if they're still registered Democrat, have really swung. The county went for President Trump back in 2016 by 19 points. This was a place where people really were drawn in by President Trump's message. So even if they're nominally Democrats, they're now voting for President Trump. So what we were looking at is, are they still going to be with President Trump, and in what kind of numbers in Beaver County this time around? And I think what's interesting is I met a lot of people who said, yeah, we're still with him. I met a couple named Randy and Kathy who, again, used to be diehard Democrats, and now they're really into Trump. They've already, they had the big sign in their yard. But then I also talked to a woman named Marion Wise who voted for Trump. She said she never actually thought he'd win in 2016, but she was attracted to his message of drain the swamp. And now she's completely disenchanted with him. She's just over President Trump and not going to go there. So I think that's going to be a big question, is those red counties, those counties that we think are going to go red for President Trump in Pennsylvania, particularly in the West, perhaps also in the Northeast. There are a lot of rural areas of Pennsylvania. What are they going to do on this election night? Is it going to look like what you're seeing in Florida, where red counties get even more red?
Kate Snow, thank you, Kate.
All right, the economy, the big issue Andrew just mentioned, showing up in the exit poll. Senior business correspondent Stephanie Ruhle with us. What are you watching? What are you seeing tonight, Stephanie?
Savannah, we know that people vote based on what affects them, not offends them, and that absolutely means money. Back in February, President Trump thought he'd be running and winning on the economy as his top issue. COVID changed that. And while normally Republicans do very well on economic issues, we've seen Joe Biden start chipping away at the president's lead on the economy because we don't have a national plan to address COVID. And until we address the health crisis, we're still going to be in this financial crisis. crisis. Just think about it, Savannah. While a portion of the country is doing well economically, our recovery has been like a K for people who can work from home, who can afford to buy homes or cars while interest rates are so low, or people who are invested in the markets. But for millions of others, they're out of work. And if they're out of work, they're at risk of being without health care. We've got a lot of small businesses at risk. We've got a divided economy at maybe the most crucial time of the year.
All right. Thank you very much, Stephanie. We want to turn now to former counselor to the president and manager of his 2016 campaign, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, we've been talking about Florida. It seems to be trending in the right direction for your candidate, President Trump. Are you exhaling yet?
No, we know we've got a long way to go. Even in 2016, Savannah, we waited until 2:30 for Secretary Clinton to call and concede. These things can go late into the night, but we do like what's happened in Florida for several reasons. Obviously, it's an incredibly important electoral vote-rich state, but also it's a representation of the country. Many people are moving there from other states, obviously. 70% of Miami-Dade roughly is Hispanic, and we see that Vice President Biden has underperformed there, but we also are looking at some of the exit polls among Hispanics elsewhere. So in Florida, plus 27 for Hillary Clinton, plus 8 for Joe Biden. In Georgia, plus 40 for Hillary Clinton, plus 25 for Joe Biden. Ohio, among Hispanics, plus 41 for Hillary Clinton, now plus 24 for Joe Biden. So I think that the box that people try to put some of us in based on our gender, our race, our ethnicity, our age, is really being tossed on its head in this election. Hispanics care about far more than immigration. That is important, but they also care about many other issues. Seniors care more about than just health care, perhaps for Medicare. They certainly care about that, but it's plus. And women care more than just about abortion. I think voters are telling us all, reminding us all, that we throw into our voter cauldron many different issues, ideas, images, and individuals, and we stir it up, and then we make our choice. The Trump campaign very much likes what they see in the day of voting, because we know that the Democrats did a fantastic job banking that early, really first day of early voting. In fact, in places like North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Michigan, they had huge gains in the first day. If you wanted to vote against Donald Trump for the last 4 years, you were ready. You stood in line for hours, and you did it. But you can vote early. You can't vote often. You can only vote against him one time. And we're counting on the people who turned out to the rallies, and even those who didn't want to put signs in the yard, stickers on the bumper, to turn out today. But we're patient people. We'll see this through the night or through the week if we need to. And I think, just like Chuck Todd was going over, we're looking at some counties as well to see 2016, 2020 performance, but also looking at some surprises. Sometimes voters repeat history, and sometimes they make history.
Hey, Kellyanne, I'm curious, are you comfortable, considering that some of the exit poll numbers you've seen in the prioritizing of the virus versus the economy, and how that looked in certain battleground states? First of all, you don't have a Miami-Dade in a lot of these other battleground states. That's a unique unicorn you guys created, and I think you guys deserve a ton of credit. This is a 4-year project, so kudos to you and that organization. That is an impressive feat. But I am curious, are you comfortable closing the way the president did on the virus, given what you've seen in the exits in a lot of these other states where a majority of the voters appear to be on the other side of virus versus the economy?
I've always thought the president should go back in time, Chuck, and really talk more about all that was accomplished. He talks about China and European travel being shut down early and how that saved lives. But, we were in lockdown at the White House for quite a while. He couldn't go to Mar-a-Lago, Bedminster, rallies, foreign travel, nothing. No visits to states. There was nothing. And what were we doing? 7 days a week in that task force. My seat was right behind Drs. Birx and Fauci. Actually, I learned a great deal from both of them. And the president signed into law $1 trillion worth in the CARES Act, PPP to help save these small businesses and save American jobs, PPE, billions of masks and gloves and gowns, and of course ventilators, thankfully, for anybody who needed it. So I've always been urging, go back in time and recognize that we women are the chief healthcare officers of our households. We control about 2 out of every 3 healthcare dollars spent in this country. And even if you, as a female voter, say, I'm not particularly worried about me or someone in in my household, God forbid, contracting or dying from COVID, I'm worried about other people. I'm not just a direct stakeholder, I'm a shareholder for other people in my life. I'm worried about Aunt Edna in the nursing home. I'm worried about Grandma who we haven't been able to visit. I'm worried about my kids' school reopening too quickly. And I've been a very loud voice about healthcare being a very important issue to women. And I think that going back in time and taking more credit and reminding people all that we did came together. Do you remember, Chuck, in March, the president had a 62% approval rating for handling of COVID? And I remember telling him in the Oval Office, you've never had a 62% approval rating on anything, including the economy, and you've presided over a dynamic economy. I think at that time, the country really was rallying around the flag and saying, let's all come together and watch the mobilization. Now, I think the president's done a great job reminding Americans of the facts that the vaccine development under Operation Warp Speed is tremendous. As Director Collins says at NIH, he's never seen anything come together so swiftly for the government and the private sector. In less time, Chuck, than it takes to have a baby, we've developed a vaccine. We've got 3 or 4 in the final phases. That's great news for everyone. That will help the therapeutics mitigate the virus. The vaccine will eradicate the virus.
All right, Kellyanne.
Hopefully that will come sometime by the end of the year or early next year.
Kellyanne Conway, thank you so much for being with us. I want to get some thoughts from Casey Hunt.
Well, at this hour, Lester, as I'm continuing to talk to sources across the country who are watching numbers in these key states, at Florida, I would say you were just talking a little bit about some of the reasons why Florida seems to be trending for President Trump. But Democrats I'm talking to are essentially saying that they're at the point where they're basically ready to write it off for Joe Biden. And they're starting to talk about the numbers in the suburbs, and they're pointing to Chuck Todd's mother's county, Seminole County, in the suburbs of Orlando, as a place to look to try and see if those kinds of trends are going to be replicated in other suburbs in Atlanta, for example, in Georgia or in Phoenix. So I think the way this conversation is changing tells you that they realize that they're potentially having a tough night here in Florida. There's also a couple House races in Florida where we may see some surprises, particularly Congresswoman Donna Shalala, who's a Democrat down in the Miami-Dade area, who may actually be on track to lose her race. And the House, remember, every member of Congress is up for re-election, and we have been anticipating that Democrats were likely to win seats in the House, potentially in the single digits. They would have considered double digits to be a good night, but that Shalala race potentially a warning sign for them.
All right, Casey, thank you very much. If you had Chuck Todd's mom in your drinking game, you're having a good night so far. We're going to be back in a moment. More Decision 2020 election night coverage in just a moment. A live look, Senator Mitch McConnell delivering his victory speech. He's headed back to the Senate. Will he be majority leader or minority leader? Only this night, and the voters of the United States will tell. We'll be watching back in a moment.
31 years, Americans have dominated one challenge after.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The wind standing these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back. At top of the hour, we're going to have a lot more poll closings, but let's talk about Pennsylvania. Something tells me Andrea Mitchell will be talking about it all night long and then some.
And then for several days. One of the really important things about Pennsylvania is that Hillary Clinton only won the suburban counties, the 4 big suburban counties outside of Philadelphia, by 180,000 votes. That was not nearly enough to offset Donald Trump's big strength out west, where Casey Hunt was talking about, Kate Snow was talking about, and the rural vote, the steel workers, the energy industry. In any case, what they now think is that the suburban collar counties around Philadelphia will produce a 300,000 vote edge. That's what they really need to do for Joe Biden, and that's what they're looking at. The other thing was that it was 70-30 in those rural western Pennsylvania areas.
70-30 for Trump
over
yes.
Clinton.
Yes.
They think that Joe Biden, coming from Scranton, being a working-class union guy, can shave that to 64-36, something of that nature. The other surprising thing is that, contrary to what the Biden people had expected, we're seeing in the exit polls that nationally, seniors are going marginally for Trump over Biden. People had thought that that would be a strong Biden vote. Seniors worried about health care, worried about COVID. But so far, it's 51-48, something like that.
So seniors did not abandon Trump over the coronavirus, but we'll see what happens in the suburbs, as you say.
Let's take a look at North Carolina. A fair amount of the votes in there, Chuck.
No, a lot of the votes in. Biden's holding a lead here. As you can see, he's got a 219,000 vote lead. I want to show you something here just so you can see how much vote is left. So he's got about a 200,000 vote lead. We think there's about 1.8 million vote still left to come in. And you see gray counties, for what, in case you're wondering when you see this, it means we have no vote in them yet. If it's gray. So it's stuff like this. Let me just quickly show you something here, just to show you already Joe Biden's vote total here, 2.149, okay, with 70% in. Let me just show you Hillary Clinton. When all the votes were counted, it was 2.189. First of all, you could see turnout is way up, but you could see Democratic turnout in particular. And the story is right now in these suburban counties. I showed you Mecklenburg here. Right now, he's got a nearly 200,000 vote lead out of there. Hillary Clinton didn't get but 140,000 out of it. And you can see here, he's even outperforming. Let me go to 08 Obama, because 08 Obama carried North Carolina. And as you can see, he got 100,000 out of Mecklenburg. He could get 200,000. That's how you win the state of North Carolina, guys.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. Joining us now, Jose Diaz-Balart. He's in Florida. He's the anchor of Weekend Nightly News and Noticias Telemundo. And Jose, the Florida story really focuses on the Latino vote and a massive get out the vote and persuasion operation dedicated to South Florida, a place you know well.
I do indeed. Good evening. And it's going to be the story if indeed Donald Trump ends up winning the state of Florida. It could have a lot to do with specifically South Florida and the Latino vote in South Florida, specifically Cuban-American voters, Venezuelan-American voters, Nicaraguan-American voters, and some Colombian-American voters that for the last 3 years Donald Trump has been working very consistently, insistently, and also there's been a very strong push for the last months that Democrats are socialist, and that attack went unanswered for a long time. Maybe that will have some impact on how Florida ends up. We'll wait and see.
All right, Jose, my friend, thank you, sir. Much more to come on this election night. We'll be right back.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Well, we're pushing on toward the 9 o'clock Eastern hour, and there will be a lot of closings coming up at 9 o'clock. Let's walk you through them. Battlegrounds, including Arizona, Michigan, Minnesota, Texas, and Wisconsin.
And the fact that we're calling Texas something of a battleground this year shows you what an extraordinary year it is. In just a few moments, we will have those poll closings. We are starting to fill out our map already. Some surprises. And one thing that is not surprising, Florida was tight, but so far it is trending in the president's direction. A must win for him tonight.
And as we wait that next big round of poll closings at the top of the hour, we'll pause here briefly. You are watching Decision 2020 on NBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
from every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
All right, we're about to pick up a little momentum on the evening. At the top of the hour, about a minute away, 14 states with a combined total of 156 electoral votes about to close, including 5 battleground states, Arizona, Michigan, Minnesota, Texas, and Wisconsin. These are all very important states we've been watching and potential paths to victory for both candidates.
And let's look at some of the results we do have in. Florida is counting votes fast. It's too close to call there. Pennsylvania, too early to call.
In Georgia, it's too early to call. Also, North Carolina, too early. And Ohio, too early.
And let's look at Ohio. It is too early to call there, too. And for folks wondering, yes, we had early voting either in person or by mail like we've never seen before. 100 million people voted before Election Day. And if you are wondering, yes, we've taken that into account when we give you that expected vote number. It includes the estimated early vote as well as the day of vote. And we're awaiting those 9 o'clock poll closings. Texas and Arizona, big Latino populations, but a different kind than what we've been talking about in Florida. Andrea, hold that thought because we do want to mention, here we go, Texas, too early to call at this hour. In Arizona, it is also too early to call, as you might expect.
Michigan, too early to call.
Got some results in from Minnesota. Not many, actually. Too early to call there. Wisconsin, it's going to be a long one. And in New York, Biden will pull that one out and not shock anyone.
Colorado, too early, but Biden has a lead there. Kansas, too early. And Louisiana, too early. Biden, though, with the lead.
All right, and let's look at Nebraska. Too early to call there. We're keeping an eye on that one particular congressional district that can be quite competitive. In New Mexico, it is too early to call. In North Dakota, too early to call, but the president is leading.
Same story in South Dakota. The president leading, too early to call. And Wyoming, it's too early to call. Trump with a lead there.
So let's put up our map of 270 and let's see how it shakes out at 9 o'clock Eastern time, 6 o'clock Pacific. And there you have it. Numbers don't quite tell the story. We're going to have to wait for all the votes to be counted. Andrea, we were talking about Texas and Arizona. Now the polls have closed. They'll start counting the votes. The Latino vote, incredibly important there.
incredibly important. And as Chuck was saying, Miami-Dade, Florida, the Cuban-American community is a unicorn. But it's a very different kind of Latino vote in Arizona and in Texas. In Texas, Latinos going by plus 19 for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. In Arizona, Latinos going plus 30 for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. Obviously, a different composition. Only plus 8 for Joe Biden over Donald Trump in Florida. So that shows you the disparity, where you've got different group of Latino vote in Arizona. Out west, you have more Mexican Americans, more from other parts of South America, less of the, obviously, very few of the Cuban Americans, and you have very different ideology and different voting.
The Latino vote's going to be big in Arizona and Texas, as is the suburban vote.
Exactly. But
there's obviously big swaths of rural parts of those states that tend to be Trump country.
It is. And Texas is going to be, by the way, we already have a lot of vote in because they do a lot of early voting, but they're going to be in there. But I want to take us to Ohio. Because Ohio, believe it or not, has been sitting there. Again, we're still waiting for somebody to win a road game, right? We have yet to have a flip. But as you can see, we got 53% of the vote in. Biden's holding about a 266,000 vote advantage here. And just so you show, we still got a ton of vote, right? Nearly 3 million votes are left to count. As you can see here, the breakouts, just so you can see, 1.3 of the early absentee has been counted. Mike DeWine basically said half the vote was early and half the vote was expected today. Governor of Ohio, on Election Day. So, but let me just tell you, one of the other things we have, if he's going to win Ohio, if Joe Biden's going to make a comeback in Ohio, he's going to have to flip a whole bunch of what we call the Obama-Trump counties. All of these counties here right now, and what you see in the red, if they're red, they're still trending Trump, and if they're blue, they're trending Biden. So we can see here, Wood County, a small county here, this is right now, but you can see Trump narrowly carried it, but he carried it by 8 points because ton of third-party vote here. Ton of third-party vote in Ohio did really well. Johnson did much better there, but as you can see, this is a county that Obama carried. Biden hasn't caught his number there, but he's getting close, and he's obviously going to outperform Obama 12. So I'm going to be monitoring all of these Obama Trump counties, particularly in Ohio, because the only path for Biden to somehow pull the Ohio upset is if he's going to take most of these counties that Trump carried and flips most of them, if not all of them, back to blue.
But polls have had the president pretty far ahead in Ohio.
Well, all this year, it's been interesting. He's been ahead, but the margins have been smaller. It's been a little bit of older voters, and there is a bit of Joe Biden. It plays a little bit better in Ohio than maybe any other Democrat that had run for president during this primary.
I want to put up Florida again because we've changed our characterization there, or have we? Okay, Trump now officially leading in Florida. 29 electoral votes are watching there. Chuck.
Okay. I'm going to go to Kristen Welker, who's at Biden headquarters. Hey, Kristen, what's the talk there as Florida starts to slip out of their hands?
Well, they are acknowledging that, Savannah, and I'm told by officials that they're in a wait-and-see mode, but they still feel very confident about their path to 270. And look, we go back to this idea that they fought hard for Florida, but didn't need Florida in order to win. There are a number of other paths, but the question is, what does this potentially mean about Georgia, about North Carolina? I put that question to a campaign official who said not a whole lot. Look, they think that the electorate is unique in Florida for all of the reasons that you've been talking about, particularly in the Miami-Dade area. They think that the president's attacks trying to characterize Joe Biden as socialist stuck. Obviously, that's a characterization that he would reject outright. But one top Democrat telling me they still feel very solid about their chances in Georgia and North Carolina. Now, what if they don't win either state? Well, officials tell me that is okay because Joe Biden still has a path to 270 without winning those two states. He would need to win Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And so that is why you have Joe Biden visiting Pennsylvania 14 times, more than any other battleground state since he won the nomination. That's why he was there again today in Scranton, in Philadelphia, really trying to drive up the vote in Philadelphia, in the suburbs. Of course, that part of the Obama coalition that did not turn out in force in 2016. He needs it if he's going to pull out a victory in the all-important state of Pennsylvania. Savannah and Lester.
All right, let's bring in Hallie Jackson right now at the White House. Hallie?
So we've been talking about Ohio. Chuck just had that up on the big board there. That's a really interesting state because the Trump campaign, folks that I've been talking to throughout the day and into the evening here, had been feeling confident about the way that that was going to go based on some of the polling that Savannah mentioned. They'd been seeing something similar internally. That was actually one of the battleground states that they felt most confident about, along with Florida. So that is one that we're watching very closely, given what Chuck is referencing and the way that, again, with still very early in the night, still a lot of vote to come in, but with what we're seeing in some parts of Ohio and what we're looking for there. You've also got the state, as Kristen was talking about with the Biden campaign, of Pennsylvania. That is actually the place where President Trump campaigned more than anywhere else. And I can tell you that there are some counties that the Trump team is looking at tonight. So Dauphin County, for example, that's kind of in the central eastern part of the state near Harrisburg. You've got some of those collar counties right around Philadelphia, Bucks County, Chester County, Montgomery County. They're looking at Erie County, for example, in the western part of the state, a more sort of rural area, an area where the president feels confident. He has spent so much time in that state because it is critically important. Another state the president has spent a lot of time in is North Carolina. I was just there yesterday, actually, in Fayetteville, and I can tell you that folks in President Trump's orbit are looking specifically at some of those. If we could go back to that big board, when we do, those counties still in gray, right around Raleigh-Durham, right? Because that is going to be really important. You can see them there, still in white here. Joe Biden needs to do well there. They're wondering what the margins are going to be. A lot of eyes on North Carolina here. And then the other state that I'll mention is Georgia, too, looking at what the president's performance will be. That is a state that, again, is sort of on the cautiously optimistic to optimistic bubble for Team Trump based on our latest reporting.
All right, Hallie, thank you. And joining us now, NBC News contributor Hugh Hewitt, host of The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network, a Trump supporter, and Maria Teresa Kumar, president and CEO of Voto Latino, a Biden supporter. Welcome to both of you. Let me talk to you, Maria Teresa, how you feel about what has happened in Florida. We haven't called it, but of course the president is said to be leading, and the results in Miami-Dade disappointing for Joe Biden, in particular among Latino votes.
So, first of all, everybody knew that that Florida was going to be the problem child. It's a very close call. As Andrea was mentioning earlier, that the Latino vote is not monolith. But for folks watching really closely, the other states that are up for grabs are Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, and Arizona. 4 of those states, and this is what really differentiates the Latino vote in Florida compared to the other ones, is that all of them had local legislation that had show me your paper anti-immigrant laws. That was a political awakening moment for the Latino community roughly about 6-7 years ago. And you see a whole slate of candidates that have not only run for office, but are quite competitive. You see that in Texas, you see that in North Carolina, you see that in Georgia, and absolutely in Arizona. And you also see an aging in of the Latino population. For example, in Texas, you have 25% of Latino youth unregistered voters are in Texas, and they're outperforming. 33% of the people in the Latino community that sat it out last time, Savannah, are voting again. So you see a huge surge in these populations where in these states where there has been a lot of friction and a lot of anti-immigrant policies. Florida is simply, that's not the case. They don't have those really diminishing, difficult pieces of legislation that racially profile the Latino community.
All right, Hugh, let me bring in you here. Talk about North Carolina. What do you see there that may worry you or may encourage you?
The good news out of North Carolina is that it's more solidly Tom Tillis than I had expected it to be at this hour. In fact, the Senate everywhere is looking very good for Republicans. John James, I believe, is running ahead of President Trump in Michigan. The early numbers on David Perdue look very good vis-a-vis John Ossoff. It looks like a runoff in the special. And I spoke to Joni Ernst earlier today. She's feeling very confident in Iowa. Susan Collins is feeling confident in Maine. And so as good as I feel about the president right now and the Senate, I go back to Ohio, which Chuck was looking at, my hometown of Trumbull County, is first went for the President Trump in 2016 for the first time for a Democrat since Richard Nixon in 1972. Can he hang on there? And the big difference in Ohio that I know Chuck knows, and you guys will know, is that Rob Portman is not on the ballot this time, providing an additional kind of ground game and strength. Rob Portman, one of the most popular Republicans in Ohio, is not on the ballot. He helped get the president over the line 4 years ago. So I'm watching that with great concern, but I am very cheered by the Florida numbers. There are some people, I know NBC has not called Florida, but some people have called Florida for President Trump. And so I'm very cheered that that's an early call. And I extrapolate that out to a few congressional districts in California where that voter who left a socialist country. That's how I'm characterizing it. That would include Venezuelans, that would include Nicaraguans, that would include people, of course, from Cuba. I think that vote, as Maria was talking about, is one that we've got to keep an eye on in the California congressional district that will matter. Right now, I'm pretty happy, with the exception of I would love to see Ohio get some more red votes pretty quickly.
All right, Hugh and Maria, thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring in Casey Hunt. I know you got some reporting on North Carolina, which we're watching closely, Texas as well.
That's right, Savannah. As I've been talking to sources on both sides of the aisle, I mean, one of the places that I try to look is to find agreement in terms of what we're seeing. And both sides of the aisle do seem to be in agreement that Thom Tillis, who's running for Senate in North Carolina, seems to be performing better, certainly than many of my sources expected he might. And I will say both Democratic and Republican sources who were pretty concerned about Tillis, if you were a Republican, and whether he was going to be able to hang on. And that, of course, raises questions about where things stand in the presidential race, which my sources are also saying is very, very close, but my Democratic sources are less optimistic about it than they were just an hour or so ago. And that's a trend that's holding across the Sun Belt, Texas as well. There was a chance that Democrats were perhaps going to take back the Texas State House. That has incredible repercussions as we head into a season of redistricting. They're now not optimistic that that's something that they're going to be able to pull off, although we still have a lot of data out there. There's also questions about Georgia. Senator David Perdue, a Republican, who also potentially, we had talked about, was in danger from a Democratic challenger. Some of the conversations heading into the night were, would David Perdue's opponent get 50%? Increasingly, it's now looking like Perdue may be in much better shape. That also raises questions about where the Biden campaign stands in Georgia, although my sources are also saying that there do seem to be a fair number of ticket splitters, people that are voting for Joe Biden, but who are also voting for David Perdue. So that underscores this trend that perhaps people are voting for Republican senators, but are willing to take a look at Joe Biden, Savannah.
All right, Casey, thank you. And let's look at some of the Senate races at this hour. There's a hot race going in Arizona between Mark Kelly, the former astronaut, and Martha McSally, the incumbent there. We are awaiting vote. Arizona does almost all of its voting by mail, but hasn't reported votes out yet in any significance. Here in Colorado, Cory Gardner, the incumbent, is widely expected to potentially lose his seat tonight. And sure enough, former Governor John Hickenlooper is leading in that race.
All right, let's look at Kansas Senate. Too early in that race.
Michigan's Senate race, too early to call there. That's another Democrat who some felt might be on the rope, so we'll watch that one. Minnesota's got a Senate race going. It is too early to call there.
Same story in New Mexico, too early. Texas, John Cornyn, the incumbent, will hold on to his seat. We project him as the winner.
And let's look at South Dakota. We are projecting that Mike Rounds, the senator, the incumbent, will go back to Congress. And here's how it's shaking out at this hour. That is the breakdown. Remember that Democrats would have to gain 3 seats if they win the White House to gain control of the majority, and 4 if the president is reelected. We'll keep our eye on that. We'll take a quick break. Stay with us. Much more as election night coverage continues right here on NBC. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient, you're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The wind standing these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back. We've got a couple of new calls to make in the presidential race in Colorado. Biden is the projected winner. South Dakota, Trump, the projected winner.
Okay, so if you're keeping track at home, that's 1 apiece. Let's ring Garrett Haken. He's in Houston, Texas. Texas saw just an enormous outpouring of early vote. Garrett, what are we seeing now as the results are starting to come in?
Savannah, as those early votes are getting counted in the big cities, you're seeing Joe Biden build a bit of a firewall here in Harris County, in Dallas County, in Tarrant County. That's the Fort Worth area. That particular county is essentially tied, but big leads for Biden in Dallas County and Harris County, but perhaps not big enough. He's outperforming Hillary Clinton's margins in the state from 2016 significantly, but he's about on par with where Beto O'Rourke was in 2018 in a race that O'Rourke ended up losing by about 2.5 points. The other sign of concern for Democrats in the state, the Rio Grande Valley, traditionally Hispanic counties, places like McAllen, Texas, appear to be underperforming for Biden as to where Clinton was 4 years ago. The trick for Democrats here was always going to be run up the score in a major way in Harris County. Now, with just the early votes in, Biden does have a firewall, but as these same-day votes start to come in, you just wonder if it's going to be enough for him to hold on in a state that was always a bit of a reach state for Democrats, but one where they felt a lot of demographic trends and people moving into the state might give them a shot at flipping the state for the first time in some 40 years. Savannah?
All right, Garrett, thank you. Interesting, though, to see that theme now in a different region of the country where the Latino vote is just not turning out for Joe Biden as he expected, at least so far.
Look, I'm going to take you to Georgia in a minute, but I do want to make a point about North Carolina that's very important. And remember what we were going to tell you about this? So 78% of the vote is in. Right? That's a lot of vote. Remember what the orange means. The orange is the vote that took place before today. Okay? The yellow is what is the vote that's coming in. And what we're waiting, basically, Biden's been sitting on his early vote lead. And what we're waiting to come in this last 21% of the vote in North Carolina is same-day vote. We know Trump won election day vote. The question is, did he win by enough to make up that margin? That's going to be how we're watching North Carolina over the next hour or so on there. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on that and realize what vote is out. And it's election day vote right now that we have not seen that much of in North Carolina. Let me take you to Georgia. It's just starting to come in. Some of the rural counties come in for me. I'll just give you an example. Here we are here. This is where either Biden wins or loses this. This is the Atlanta suburbs, the monster region here, and you'll see we still only have 1% of the vote in DeKalb County. So we've got a long way to go. But I want you to watch a county here. This is the next county out. The closest red county to Atlanta these days, Trump narrowly carrying it. And you can just see 4 years ago, he carried it by almost 20 points. And this is the question. And you see here, Romney carried it by 31 points over President Obama. So the question is, and it's the same story as Texas, right? How much of an advantage can Biden build out of Atlanta and its suburbs, and can he keep encroaching, keep finding some exurban counties like Fayette there that I'm telling you about, and then overcome that strong rural vote for Donald Trump? It's basically the same story almost in every one of these battleground states.
All
right, Chuck, thank you. We're going to take a quick break now. We'll be back with more Decision 2020 election night coverage in just a moment.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Welcome back. During the break, some new calls. Let's look at North Dakota. And President Trump is the projected winner in North Dakota.
In Alabama, President Trump is the winner there. There's also a Senate race going on there. We'll check in with that in a few moments.
And looking at Florida once again, checking in there. It is too close to call, but Trump leads in Florida. And in Texas right now, too early to call.
Well, it's only been 25 minutes since the polls closed in Texas and Arizona, a couple of states that folks are going to be watching very, very closely. We'll continue to monitor it. We've got much more election coverage to come here on NBC. We'll be back in just a few. good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient, you're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
from every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
and in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
It is almost 9:30 in the East. Let's show you where we are right now.
All right, Florida, too close to call, but the president is leading. A lot of the vote is in, so we anticipate a call coming up pretty soon. In Pennsylvania, it is too early to call. That may well be a race that lasts for days.
Let's look at Texas. This is a place that Joe Biden has tried to turn blue. It is too early in Texas right now. Arizona, it is too early as well.
Let's take a look at Arizona, see how much vote is in at this hour. Too early to call. It doesn't look like they've reported any, but let's go to Michigan now. Too early to call there, but that is a battleground, one closely watched, one that Joe Biden has got to flip back to blue this year. North Carolina, too early to call. We've been watching it very closely. That's another one that the Democrats had hoped to flip.
We've been keeping a big eye on Ohio as well. 60% in their 18 electoral votes. That's too early to call right now. And Georgia as well. This is another state that Joe Biden has tried to add to the expanded map. Too early in Georgia.
The map's starting to fill out a little bit, but we've got the big remaining questions. I don't believe we've yet to call a battleground, Chuck. So
Well, we haven't, and we certainly haven't seen a flip yet, but Florida looks like, we have an idea where it's heading because we're telling you. We think Trump is leading here. We're at 80%. Let's look at how, this is North Carolina. This, to me, is the next shoe to drop here, I think we see as the vote comes in. And as you can see, Joe Biden's margin is now less than 100,000, still 20%, still 1 million votes to go. Right now, the way that's eaten, let's see. It's these gray counties that we don't have anything in yet. And if you want an idea, this one next to Raleigh here, this is something that's expected to be a big Trump county. You have this empty county here. Franklin's expected to be a Trump county. This one here. So you can see this is why There's pessimism on the Democratic side, optimism on the Republican side when it comes to where we are with North Carolina. And let me take you over to Georgia. Let's just get an update there to see. We're looking, this vote's trickling in here, 40%. We're still, until I see more than 1% out of DeKalb, we still got a long, long way to go in Georgia with the same game. But going back to North Carolina, that's what you're going to keep following. That should be the next shoe to drop, I think, before 11 o'clock.
All right.
All right, let's turn to Andrea Mitchell right now. Talk a little bit about the expectations leading in tonight, the worries about Russia and Iran and meddling in our election. Any signs of any of that?
No signs of any cyber. There was a lot of misinformation leading up to the election, but no signs of any cyber hacking. But we've now learned from two sources that U.S. Cyber Command did take offensive military action against government-linked hackers in both Russia and Iran. It was described by official sources to us as annoyances, not crushing blows, similar to what they did in the run-up to the 2018 midterms. We've seen no signs, as I say, of cyber hacking so far targeting this election from Russia or Iran, but they did take this action preemptively. Last time, they put them out of action for a couple of days, and then the government hackers were back in action again.
But the biggest worry seemed to be more influence campaigns as opposed to physical infrastructure
And that we certainly saw
changes.
plenty of signs of, and that they announced a couple of weeks ago, and they've been tracking it, Russia, Iran, and to a lesser degree, China.
All right, Andrea.
I believe we have a call in South Carolina to make in the presidential race. Again, an expected result. The president will take South Carolina. But let's stay on this subject of national security. We've got 4 former secretaries of Homeland Security joining us. Tom Ridge and Michael Chertoff, who served under President George W. Bush, and Janet Napolitano and Jay Johnson. They served under President Obama, and I had the pleasure of speaking to all of you last week. All of you had a concern that Americans feel reassured about the integrity of the election. I'll start with you, Secretary Chertoff. How are you feeling tonight about how the election has played out so far?
Well, I think some of the biggest concerns we had turned out not to have come to fruition. I think there was a big concern about violence that might interfere with people's ability to actually go to the polls on Election Day, or interference with the voting process, or even potentially government agents being present in a way that would be intimidating. And the reporting I've seen suggests that other than a few sporadic instances of potential voter intimidation, largely this has gone reasonably smoothly. So it looks, at least in terms of the issue of getting people to the polling places and getting them to vote, we've avoided any serious problems. Now, of course, we still have the question of the count and the result, and that could very well be an occasion for seeing some more disruption.
Well, that brings me to Secretary Ridge, who, by the way, hails from the great state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And when we talked earlier, Secretary Ridge, I think you said many, many times, November 3rd, today is the last day to cast your ballot. It is not the last day to count your ballot. Are you concerned that we may have a days-long, perhaps longer process in Pennsylvania before us?
Well, I think we're going to have a day or days-long process in several states. I know there are several states that didn't begin processing ballots until a day or two before the November 3rd, and Pennsylvania today didn't begin processing its ballots until 7 a.m. this morning. But frankly, I think we've demonstrated, and I follow up on my colleague, Secretary Chertoff, what we've seen today, I think, is the respectful presence of Republicans and Democrats at the polls, acting and respecting one another's expression of preference. I mean, we've had very few reports of fraud, very few reports of intimidation, in spite of all the pre-polling anxiety and some communities' fear. I'll give you a perfect example. I decided to vote in person today, showed up at 6:45. By then, there were already 60 people in line. Some people had a MAGA hat on, another couple people had Biden shirts on, but everybody was there, masked, social distancing, respecting each other's right to cast a vote. I think in considerable measure, it's a good news day for America. We respected each other so far, and I believe we will continue to respect the outcomes in 4 or 5 states who we may not know for a day or two.
Well, let's ask somebody who knows a little bit about that, Secretary Napolitano. You had a governor's race in Arizona that got stretched out a little longer than you probably would have preferred. What's your advice to folks who are watching, especially if we do have these states where it just comes down to the wire and it takes some time to count?
Yeah, that's right. In 2002, when I ran for governor in Arizona the first time, my opponent didn't concede for 6 days after the election, and we just had to be patient. I actually went to a spa in California and just got out of town for a couple of days.
Well, maybe that's some good advice for all of us.
Exactly. I'll use a little of that now. But I think the point is that today went well. It went well for America, it went well for our democracy, but now we need to be patient and let the states that are slower to count their votes so that everybody's right to vote is respected.
Secretary Johnson, what's on your mind tonight?
I agree with my colleagues. We're pleased that there weren't the problems we were concerned about at polling places. Andrea noted a few weeks ago the Iranians had attempted to intimidate voters. We do know that the Russians targeted a vast number of different sources of information. Our government does not know what they intend to do about that. But I think all of us are reassured by the strength of our democracy. You know, my son is in the Coast Guard. He's deployed overseas right now, and he voted online several thousand miles away. He really wanted to vote. He voted online, and today he got this postcard in the mail to our home in New Jersey. Your ballot has been received by the state of New Jersey. So I feel pretty good about that.
Well, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, 4 individuals who've served our country. Thank you for your time and for your care. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's worth noting we've not heard the word chaos much today. A lot of
nor have we seen it.
Nor have we seen it, obviously. Let's go to Hallie Jackson right now. Hallie, let's talk a little bit about North Carolina and how the president's campaign is looking at those numbers right now.
Yeah, they're looking at them in, I think, a positive light, Lester. I just got off the phone with one source close to the campaign who's talking about how they believe that North Carolina could be potentially a good thing for them. It is going to be tighter than in 2016. Back in 2016, President Trump won by about 3.5 points in that state. Right now, the returns do show, as we're looking at the numbers here, I'm looking at the percentage, 80% of the vote in. The key thing is something that we have been talking about a couple of times tonight, those counties up there near Wake County by the Raleigh-Durham metro area where the vote still is not in. So those are some of the things that I think the Trump team is looking at. But they are feeling, I think, more positive about North Carolina. That was a state that they'd been optimistic about, but not necessarily slam dunk confident the way that they entered the night thinking about as it relates to Florida, for example. So still lots to watch in North Carolina. I will say, as it relates to Florida, I think there is a sense now from folks I've talked to in the last hour or so that they are looking or hoping to do some attempted extrapolation from where they performed well in Florida to see if that is going to extend it to some of these other key states like Ohio, like Georgia. Those are the other 2 that I'm hearing a lot about tonight, Lester.
All right. Thank you, Hallie.
Let's go to North Carolina because we are watching to see what happens there. She's in Morgan Radford is in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's one of the places where the suburban vote could be key for Joe Biden. But Morgan, right now we're waiting for the day of vote, which could break for Trump.
That's right, Savannah. We are at the Mecklenburg County Board of Elections, and this is actually where those physical ballots are now being reported from the precincts and being counted. I want to show you how it's working here on the ground because this is where the action is happening. They're bringing in these large blue bins, and in those bins there are 2 important things. There's one, the physical ballots, and I'll show you where those are being stored and sorted inside here on the right. But there's a second thing that's important. There are little USB chips, and over here to my left, that that's where they're being counted. So the precincts actually have their tabulations that are being counted in a computer that is not set up to the internet. But what's fascinating is that we've been talking all week about how this is a state that the Democrats have been aggressively trying to flip and turn blue. And so what they're focusing on inside those blue bins is to see just how blue those ballots are inside. They're focusing, one, on the suburbs. Hallie mentioned a few of the key suburbs here. How are those suburban voters going to vote? But secondly, they're looking at unaffiliated voters. When we spoke to state party officials from both sides, they said that north of 100,000 new registered voters registered as Democrats, registered as Republicans since 2016, but more than 400,000 new registered voters are unaffiliated. So the question is, what will be inside those boxes tonight?
Yeah, Chuck, what does it look like, North Carolina? How much vote is outstanding?
Well, we still have 20% of the vote outstanding. And I remember how I began the night with you guys, and I said, hey, I want to take you back to 2012. And even though this was when Barack Obama narrowly lost North Carolina, there was a lot of blue here on the border of South Carolina. These are some rural African-American counties. Now, let me show you what's going on. I told you this was going to be one of the keys. The good news for Joe Biden, he's blowing the doors off in these suburban counties. We showed you Charlotte. We showed you Raleigh. But remember I told you about Richmond, and I told you about Robeson. Where's Robeson County here? Right there. Told you about this one, African-American county. Look at Trump's number. He's got to be overperforming somewhere, right? If in order to make up that ground. Well, we found where he's overperforming. Number one, this was an important Obama county. These are some rural African-American voters not turning out. That's what this says, not turning out. Maybe they showed up on Election Day, and we shall see. But there's not a lot of vote left here. So when you're looking to see where the president overperformed in order to make up for these losses, that they're worse in Wake County, worse in Mecklenburg, Wilson, Guilford. He's making it up, it looks like, in some of these border counties in South Carolina in particular. But this has to be a bit distressing that rural African-American vote is not showing up the way it showed up for Barack Obama.
All right, Chuck, thank you. And we want to check in with Texas. It's still too early to call, but we are showing that the president is leading with approximately 74% of the vote in. We'll take a quick break here. More election night coverage when we continue Decision 2020 on NBC. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school,
What do you guys think? We're excited?
or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school,
What do you guys think? We're excited?
or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient, you're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The wind standing these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back. We got a call. Senator Cory Gardner is going back to Colorado, and former Governor John Hickenlooper, the Democrat, will pick up that seat. So that's one more in the Democrats' column in their race to try to regain control of the United States Senate.
All right, we want to bring in right now Democratic Senator and former presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Thank you for being with us. What do you see in this evening that tells you where we're going, Senator?
I see in the next hour or so, you're going to have a lot of focus on the Midwest and the West. Big news to you. Just kidding. I think what you see is what we've known all along, and that is that these critical states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota are going to be where it's at. And Joe Biden had to win these states from the beginning. I still think North Carolina is because of the Senate race there as well. I've been talking about North Carolina for days. And then as we head west, we've got Arizona and Nevada and many other places. And I think one of the messages of the night is suburban women, and that Joe Biden is doing better than a lot of people predicted in the suburbs. I think a lot of that is the president's attitude and how he's divided people, whereas Biden has said, look, I'm going to be the president for all of America. Red, blue, I don't care. I don't care if you voted for me. If you didn't, I'm going to be your president. Really important in the Midwest.
So you think this thing's moving to the Midwest. How does that blue wall look tonight?
It's looking pretty strong. The fact that we are so competitive in Ohio and doing so well in like the Cincinnati suburbs, the fact that Iowa is still in play, but it's mostly, as you know, those 2 states of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, it's going to take a while to get their votes counted. They just started today, and I think your viewers know that, but they've got to remember that, whereas Minnesota and Michigan may be coming in sooner. And so it's going to be a lot about that. The fact that we've got 4 Democratic governors in those states that have been having to bear the brunt of leading through the coronavirus. People know that in our states, whereas the president has shoved everything down to these governors. You've got a lot of things going on where these states have changed politically since 2016.
Senator, you've mentioned the blue wall. You've said it's going to stay strong, but of course, you would have liked to have some cushion. Are you disappointed that so far, at least, the Sun Belt is not turning into a blue wave as some had hoped it might for Joe Biden, at least one of them?
Well, we always know Florida is not an easy state. You didn't have a Senate race going on in that state. And the point is that from the very beginning, from the moment that Joe Biden announced, he has been focused on these Midwestern states. I know because I debated him, ran against him, did my Blue Wall tour, and one of the reasons that I endorsed him was that I felt that he would see the importance of these states where people felt left behind over the last decade. Donald Trump's policies, whether it's on trade, whether it's on manufacturing, have left a lot of people behind, and that's even before the pandemic started.
Real quick, Senator Klobuchar, let's talk about your home state of Minnesota, because Republicans had hoped to make it competitive. They have visited there. It was close in 2016. Hillary Clinton only won it by 1.6%. You feel good about Minnesota going blue for Biden tonight?
I do. We have a really strong statewide campaign. We've all hung together. We've got some key congressional races that I hope at some point you guys will get to. Tina Smith is doing well. I predict she will win. And we've had a huge voter turnout, despite some efforts by the Republicans at the last minute to stop votes from being counted. So we feel good about our state.
All right. Thank you, Senator Amy Klobuchar. Appreciate it very much.
All right. Andrea Mitchell is here. You know, that's a part of the country where the president really tried to hammer home this message of law and order and take back the streets and Antifa.
Right.
How did that go? What does the exit polling tell us?
The exit polling is telling us that it did not take with suburban white women. Overwhelmingly, their most important issue was the economy, and more than half believe that Black Lives Matter is a good thing, had a positive attitude toward Black Lives Matter. Nearly half believed that there is racial inequality in the justice system. So that whole law and order appeal after the demonstrations and the protests, some of which did turn violent, did not take hold in that appeal to suburban white women voters.
All right, Andrea, thanks very much. We've got some Senate calls, or at least some characterizations to show you. South Carolina, this is Lindsey Graham, who's faced an onslaught of money from the Harrison camp, but too early to call. Graham leads right now there.
All right, let's go to Nebraska, where NBC projects Ben Sasse, the incumbent, is headed back to Congress rather handily. We'll also keep an eye on that one congressional district in Nebraska that often flips, and we'll see how that is going in a few moments.
We'll take a break here. Be back with more Decision 2020 election night coverage after this.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Donald Trump leading in Florida right now. A lot of focus there has been and is now on Latino voters. And Andrea Mitchell has some insight on that.
Well, the Latino vote had been shifting in 2012, 2016, going away from the Republicans, where those folks had long been, towards Democrats. It has shifted back by 10 points. Donald Trump is getting in the exit polls 45% of the Latino vote in Florida. We're talking now about Florida. We're talking about Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans, and that really is the foreign policy of this administration. Pompeo, Secretary Pompeo, been hammering that home. The president has been really disciplined in his message on Joe Biden being a socialist, a false claim, but that really has borne fruit. They were, as we've been pointing out in Miami-Dade in particular, slow to canvass, and it was because of COVID. But that caution on COVID has cost Joe Biden a lot in Florida.
All right, let's pick up on that with Chuck Todd, who is at the map.
I am. I'm just looking here at North Carolina for everybody here. As you can see, that the Biden lead is down to just 29,084% in. And as you can see, we're still waiting for a lot more of our yellow, and yellow is same-day vote. And again, I will go back to the same area. Basically, the issue is going to be there is some vote in these big blue counties still. There's 17% of vote left in Wake. Guilford, there's 18%. So there's some Biden counties where there's votes out. But if you look here, there's still, this is going to be a Trump county. That's going to be a Trump county. So this still looks like a nail-biter in North Carolina, but I understand why the Trump people feel good.
All right, Chuck, thanks very much. We'll be back with poll closings in 4 more states at the top of the hour, including battlegrounds Iowa and Nevada. But first, you're watching Decision 2020 on NBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient.
You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Before 10 o'clock here in the East, and we've got Iowa, Montana, Nevada, and Utah about to see their polls close in under 50 seconds. We'll have some characterizations for you in a minute, but here's where we stand right now.
Okay, Florida, too close to call, but the president is leading 93% of the vote in there. In Texas, we are characterizing it as a Trump lead, though it is too early to call at this hour.
New Hampshire, too early. Biden is leading in New Hampshire right now. In North Carolina, it is too early to make the call. Ohio, also too early.
Georgia, lots to watch there. Too early to call. Votes are still coming in there. In Virginia, former battleground Vice President Biden is leading, but it is too early to make an official call there. And in Wisconsin, it is far too early to call. They have a lot of votes to count there.
And Pennsylvania, it's too early to call. Minnesota, too early. Same story in Maine. And Arizona, which I don't think we've seen any vote come out of Arizona.
Yeah, there's Maine and Arizona, which the polls closed about an hour ago. 85% of the voting is by mail in Arizona, and they're allowed to tabulate and count well before Election Day. But we await the great state of Arizona, my home state. And let's look at Kansas. Too early to call, but as expected, the president is leading. Now we've got some calls to make here at 10 o'clock. Iowa.
Iowa, first off, is too early. Nevada, too early.
Let's see what's going on in Montana. Not only do they have, of course, the presidential race, but a pretty competitive governor's race. Too early to call. Polls just closing there, and in Utah as well. Too early to call.
Let's look at the road to 270, the map, and show you where things break down right now. And right now, Biden with 89 electoral votes, Trump 72 on the road to 270.
Everybody kind of holding on to the states they were expected to hold on to. We haven't had any shockers yet, any flips. We do have something to report in the Georgia Senate race. There's actually 2 Senate races, and this one will advance to a runoff. Raphael Warnock there, the Democrat, having sufficient votes. We're projecting to get to that runoff, which will be held in early January. Chuck.
Right, and the question's going to be which one of Loeffler or Collins joins Warnock in there. By the way, a little nugget on Virginia that Mark Murray just learned. Virginia is the exact opposite. They've been only doing Election Day vote. They're going to count their early vote starting at 11 p.m. So if you're wondering what's going on with Virginia, that'll tell you about Virginia. Texas, you noted why is Trump ahead? Well, I can give you one. I can get you one reason why he is. I'm going to take you to those Trump 2018 counties. These were counties that both Beto O'Rourke in that Senate race against Ted Cruz, where he made us think maybe Texas is a battleground state. I want to show you around the Austin media market here. Austin, Travis County is a huge, big Democratic center. So these 2 adjacent counties here, Beto won them both. But I want to take you to Hayes here, number 1. Biden's winning it by 12. Beto won it by 16. Again, Beto O'Rourke lost the state. But the point is, and this was something Casey Hunt was learning from her sources, that there appears to be that Biden, while doing pretty well, is underperforming, particularly in the Austin media market. And this shows you right here. It's another reason why we have classified Trump as leading. And by the way, speaking of leading, I want to quickly, one place we want to take you is Ohio, and we've been showing you, remember Biden had the early lead. Well, the Republican vote is starting to come in. As you can see, the county map's getting redder, and the president now has a lead of about 100,000. You can see what we're seeing here, the early absentees. So right now we have a lot more Election Day vote. There's still some early vote to count. So we've got a long way to go in Ohio. We know it's about a 50-50 split, the early vote, which we know favors Biden, the Election Day vote, which favors Trump. So watch for our orange and yellow lines here to see if they become 50-50. But the yellow, anytime you see yellow, that's usually a pretty good sign for President Trump.
All right, let's bring in Kristen Welker now. She is at Biden headquarters. How are they feeling about the numbers and what we're seeing here?
Well, Lester, with Florida looking increasingly out of reach, of course, they are focused on North Carolina and on Georgia. One campaign official acknowledging that both of those states look very close. But this official telling me we still feel good. We still feel like we have a shot there. So they are focused on those 2 states. And then, of course, the Midwest, their blue wall. That is where they think that ultimately Vice President Biden will prevail. They are very interested in what they're seeing in Ohio. I've been talking to a number of officials in and out of the campaign, including to Democrats in Ohio, with one telling me that the turnout in some of those Democratic strongholds has been quite strong. And then in some of the swing counties, it looks like Biden is outperforming expectations. Why is that significant? Even if Biden doesn't carry Ohio, they believe it could have implications for the all-important battleground state of Pennsylvania. And that is really where we began this discussion tonight. Why has Biden spent so much time in Pennsylvania over the past several weeks throughout the course of this campaign? Because ultimately it could be make or break for Joe Biden with its electoral votes. That's why he was there today in Scranton and in Philadelphia, urging voters to turn out. Of course, back in 2016, the Obama coalition underperformed, and that's why Hillary Clinton fell short there. So he is trying to win that state back, and without Pennsylvania, very difficult for President Trump to return to the White House. So it is a critical state for him as well. Guys.
All right, Kristen, thank you. And that brings us to Jason Miller, senior advisor to the Trump campaign. Jason, it's good to have you with us. So far, it looks like the president is performing well in the states he has to win. He does have to contend with the so-called blue wall, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. How are you feeling about that?
Savannah, good evening. Feeling very, very good. I think Florida is a state that the president is definitely going to carry. Feel good about where we are with Georgia. We also feel good about North Carolina. I think we're going to win by somewhere between 50 and 70,000 votes. Also, when you take a look at some of the rural counties in Indiana, the way that we're performing with those small towns that are about 5,000 or less people, some of that can be extrapolated out and compared to, say, Wisconsin, Michigan. Looking at some of the rural areas, you look at Kent County in Michigan, for example, where we're increasing. So states where we have, or excuse me, counties where we have 75% or more of the vote in so far, we're increasing our margins in Michigan by between 6 and 7%. And I think one of the big surprises, there are two big surprises, I think, so far. Number one, I think President Trump is going to win Minnesota tonight. You look at the way the data is trending. We feel very good about that state. That's going to be a big shock to Biden and I think to a lot of folks since we haven't won that since 1972. But the biggest story of the night so far, Black voters and Latino voters helping to power President Trump forward, and I think will be the big difference in him being reelected tonight.
I know everything seems positive, but tell me the kind of thing that you started this evening wringing your hands over that still sits out there that you worry about.
Well, fundamentally, keep in mind that Democrats knew that they were going to have this early vote, the absentee votes. And so we actually saw a lot of those early votes the same way that the Democrats did. What we thought, though, was different is that we would have this red wave, folks who would actually show up on Election Day. And the Democrats essentially had already cannibalized all of their votes. People who are likely Democratic primary voters who were going to vote, people who wanted to vote against President Trump basically did that right at the beginning of the early vote period. So we feel, so we're kind of concerned a little bit about that, but it looks like our models, our predictions for the turnout are looking to be right on track. And Democrats basically shot their wad in the early vote. They just don't have it right now, and that's the difference in the enthusiasm factor. Our folks are going to show up on Election Day. Theirs aren't.
Are you ready to claim North Carolina on your map?
I think that we will win by between 50 and 70,000 votes. So that's where we're tracking. All of the counties that are outstanding are counties that the president won in 2016. And so if you, again, we're past the polling aspect. I think one of the stories for tonight is that polling is broken. Polling is like Humpty Dumpty. It's smashed into 1,000 pieces. But when you look at the actual votes that are in and our modeling for where we're going to win North Carolina.
Jason Miller, thank you for coming on.
All right, let's turn to Chuck real quick. Polling is broken. You just heard it from Jason Miller. He said it's like Humpty Dumpty falling off the wall. Are you ready to declare that verdict?
I got my issues with some state polling, that's for sure. I mean, I think there is definitely an issue in that there's just no quality control with a lot of some of these pollsters you've never heard of and things like this. There's no doubt. We're finally starting to get some Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah, see, you wanted to hear some Arizona? By the way, they did the big dump. I told you that's what they do. We went from 0 to 69%, okay? Just to give you an estimate here, as you see, there's a significant chunk. They're doing what they said they'd do. They said they'd be able to handle both their early vote and some of their same-day vote. They'd be processing it together. And as you can see, we got a big chunk of it already out. And Biden has a good lead here. Savannah, as you know, you could argue that it's a one-county election because Maricopa, one instance in the last decade where some statewide candidate lost Maricopa County, which is home of Phoenix, arguably the largest suburb in America, and somehow won statewide, but that person lost about like 1,000 votes. So as you see here, a 10-point lead right now in Maricopa with 77% in. And just so you can see, Donald Trump carried Maricopa. Mitt Romney carried Maricopa. John McCain carried Maricopa. Obviously, he was an Arizona native. So, look.
How much of Maricopa County is in?
77%. Okay. So, this is a good chunk. This is a big lead. Look, they needed something in the Sun Belt right now. I know the Biden folks are feeling a bit antsy. North Carolina's making them antsy. Georgia, we still got a lot of vote for that to come in. We know Florida appears to be gone. I know we haven't officially called that yet. So, early on right now, and it's a lot of vote in, Arizona looks like it may actually make pollsters feel better.
Let's turn to Casey on that. I am from Arizona, so I know that, yes, while Maricopa County and Pima County are important, so are all the other counties, and they're largely red counties. What are you hearing, Casey?
Well, Savannah, my sources are saying that they expect, and Chuck touched on this, to have a little bit of a roller coaster here in terms of counting, that it'll look good initially for Joe Biden, that then we may see them start to count some votes that may turn this toward Trump, and then there could be another batch that'll swing us back again. So my sources are urging patience on that front. But I will also say that there does seem to be a difference between how Mark Kelly, who's the Senate candidate in this race, the Democrat, is doing versus how Joe Biden is doing. My Republican and Democratic sources are expecting that Kelly's going to do better than Joe Biden. And I think the big question mark right now is what is the impact of the Hispanic vote in Arizona? We obviously have talked a lot about the unique qualities of the Cuban-American community, the Venezuelan-American community in Miami-Dade. Remember, of course, we've talked at length about how that really swung for President Trump. But Democrats think that that swing was big enough. They're nervous that it could replicate itself with other Hispanic communities. They've seen a little bit of it in Texas, and they're concerned about it in Arizona in the context of the presidential race. So I'm watching to see in Arizona if we actually get a split result here, if we see a Democrat win the Senate seat and potentially see President Trump carry the state at the presidential level. Savannah.
All right. Well, they have spent a lot of time, the president's campaign has spent a lot of time in Arizona over the years. We've got a new call to tell you about. It is too early to call in Ohio, but we are characterizing it a bit more, saying that the president is leading. Let's go to David Plouffe and Mike Murphy, two strategists, one Democrat, one Republican. So we've got the whole campaign covered here, although I will say Mike Murphy, Republican, who does not support Donald Trump. Mike, what are you seeing? What is giving you pause tonight?
Well, I think the Democrats wanted a quick knockout in the Sun Belt, particularly in Florida, perhaps in North Carolina or Georgia. And we have to wait on North Carolina or Georgia. But Florida's interesting, even though it looks like Donald Trump is going to be president for life of Miami-Dade County, which is what bailed him out in Florida. Biden did very well switching some swing counties there, which is a good sign, I think, for Arizona. And what I'm seeing in Ohio, which is a tight race with Biden in the hunt in a lean Republican state, is a very good sign for Michigan and Wisconsin and western Pennsylvania. There's no Miami-Dade County in Michigan, Wisconsin, or western Pennsylvania. So we just got to wait and count it, and it's going to take a while. But the quick knockout, that's just not going to happen tonight.
David, has there been too much reliance going down the stretch on this Sun Belt strategy, and are the paths now considerably more narrow, or appear to be more narrow for Biden?
Well, I think the Biden campaign is focused like a laser on Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. You had some other states come into play. Look, North Carolina is going to be very close. I think you're going to see a lot of votes still coming in the Atlanta area. That's going to make Georgia close. Arizona, I imagine that will tighten, but the 70% that's in looks good for Biden. So I think Arizona is crucial, obviously. And then I agree with Mike. I look at Ohio. It would be nice to win it, but that was a long shot. What does it tell you about western Pennsylvania, about parts of Michigan and Wisconsin? And so, yes, this is not going to be an early night. It's not going to be electoral college landslide. But until you show me numbers that suggest that Donald Trump now is the favorite in Arizona or Pennsylvania, I think Joe Biden still maintains the best route to 270. But the question in Arizona is some of the weakness we see in the Rio Grande Valley and then certainly in Miami-Dade with Hispanic voters. Does any of that carry over to Arizona? And when we really unpack the precincts, we'll get a sense of that.
All right, David and Mike, gentlemen, thanks very much. Before we pause for a quick break, an update from North Carolina's governor's race. And the incumbent, Cooper, will win, will continue to be governor.
All right, and in New Mexico, we've got Joe Biden prevailing in that state. It'll pick up New Mexico's 5 electoral votes. We're back right after this. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work, we're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, We're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient.
You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The wind standing these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
As we learn a bit more, the plot thickens. Let's show you what's happening now in North Carolina. That's moved to the too close to call category. Too close to call.
All right, and let's go to Arizona, which just unloaded a bunch of votes, and we are saying it's too early to call, but Vice President Biden does have a lead in Arizona at this hour, which brings us to Chuck Todd and his maps.
Yeah, let's take a look at what we're looking at Arizona, and the numbers coming in very quickly, and as you can see, this is why we have him leading. He's got a 9-point lead. Look, he's got a 200,000 vote advantage, and we expect there's 800,000 votes left. That's a lot. Whoop. Look at how quickly these numbers start to update themselves. The point is that he's got to make up 200,000. There's 800,000 left. You can do that math, but Trump's got to get he's got to win a big chunk of the remaining vote to pull this off, which is why we classify that as Biden leading. We just go back to Maricopa. It's a 9-point. It's a 9-point gap. That's not something you can make up. Hope in the rural counties.
What about in Tucson, my hometown? Did he run up the score? No, that's
80%. And let's see how Biden did compared to Clinton. Look at that. Right now he's running 9 points ahead of her. She won it because it's always a Democratic county. It usually is a Democratic-leaning county. But look, if we were seeing this Latino vote helping Trump, it would show up in Pima County, and we're not seeing that there. And so this is a reminder that it doesn't, again, not all Latino votes are the same when you're trying to compare them, particularly if you're in the Southeast versus the Southwest. So, look, Arizona, this is the first Sun Belt state that you sit there and you're like, okay, and there's not a lot of rural remaining vote that you sit there and say, okay, we're going to see the same thing that we've seen with Trump in Ohio and North Carolina, that as that rural vote comes in, it starts to load up. Let's take a look at North Carolina. Remember I told you, I said, one of the things you're going to see, we're going to get these straggling rural counties. that will add to his number, but that there was still some room to grow in the big blue counties. There's still a lot of vote in Wake County, 16% of the vote. This is a huge, that's a lot of voters that are left, and this has obviously been a huge Biden county. You look in Mecklenburg, not much left there, obviously, just 94% are in. Guilford, this is Greensboro, still a decent chunk of vote here. And then everywhere, Trump's strength is like a little bit everywhere. And that's the thing. You go, and I go back, I'll tell you, this rural African-American turnout is just such a, and I just want to just show you here where Trump is overperforming Robeson County. This is where he is able, he's adding to his numbers. We don't see this in some of these places.
Is that African-American voters not turning out?
This is not turning out.
Or because the president has made an effort to attract African-American
Look, we're not seeing enough evidence there. This is not, this to me looks more like not turning out.
Okay.
On that front than it does anything else. Because you look, it's basically Biden's number and Clinton's number. They're not that different, 95% in. So you've seen in other places where there's some huge Biden overperformance here. These border counties along South Carolina are going to be, if the Democrats, if Biden comes up short, I would argue that's where he's going to find the votes that he should have gotten in order to get this, in order to make North Carolina happen.
Okay.
Yeah, Minnesota. Let me quickly ask you about Minnesota. Jason Miller came on and suggested that the Trump folks feel good about Minnesota.
Look, they talk, we'll see. I mean, we only have about a third of the vote in, and just so you see, this is election day vote. So it's, you know, let's look at some of the big, I mean, look, if Biden's got a big lead right now because Hennepin County, that's Minneapolis, and we've got most of the vote in. So, yeah, as the rural counties come in, this state's likely to get closer. It was a 3-point race last time. We'll see. Okay, we'll see. I've always been a bit of a skeptic for the Trump campaign to get over the top in Minnesota. But again, it does, you know, Minnesota's a state that is certainly trending long-term towards the Republicans.
Yeah, and the Trump campaign certainly visited Minnesota many times and made an effort there. We've had two tales of that. Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota said the Democrats will hold. Jason Miller of the Trump campaign says
all in the same half hour.
There's an important Democratic Senate seat there.
Yes, there is. So we'll check in, and there's a lot of Senate races. In fact, a hot one out in Montana, Andrew was just reminding me of. We'll check in on that one as well. Take a break right here. We continue with our Decision 2020 election night coverage right after this break.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
As we come back from a break, a new call to make. This in the House of Representatives. NBC News projects that Democrats will maintain control of the House of Representatives.
All 435 houses, seats in Congress up for grabs on the House side. And so Nancy Pelosi, Andrea, will remain House Speaker.
But we don't know by what margin. She said she's going to run again. And the progressives may make a run at it if it's a narrower margin, but she will retain control. She says she wants to be Speaker again.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. Much more election coverage ahead. Stay with us. You're watching Decision 2020 on NBC.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient.
You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back. 10:30 in the East, 7:30 out west. Louisiana's votes are in. NBC News is projecting Trump as the winner there. In Kansas, the president holds on and holds the state of Kansas. There's also a Senate race going on there.
In New Hampshire, it looks like Joe Biden will win. We project him as the winner. Florida in that race, too close. Trump leads, but that race still too close. Watching it very carefully.
Same story in Texas. It's too early to call, but the president does have a lead there, and North Carolina is getting just a little bit more interesting. It is too close to call there, and we've been watching that one real closely tonight.
Ohio would be bonus category, and right now it's too early to call. Too early in the Georgia presidential contest as well.
All right, let's keep it going. Here we go in Virginia. Too early to call, but Vice President Biden does have a lead there in Wisconsin. We can call it way too early to call. They still are counting votes there.
Pennsylvania, they'll be counting them for a while. Too early in Pennsylvania. Minnesota, which we were discussing a few moments ago, that's too early as well.
All right, let's go to Maine, which divides its electoral votes by congressional district. We're calling that too early to call, but we did see a split decision in 2016 with Donald Trump picking up one electoral vote there. We'll see what happens. And Arizona, too early to call. The vote is coming in fast and furious. Vice President Biden with a lead there in Arizona at this hour.
Let's take a look at Iowa right now. Too early to call. Nevada is too early as well.
All right, Montana, too early to call. We'll keep an eye on that race, and hope to give you some Senate races in a moment here as well. And in Utah, as expected, President Trump wins. So that brings us to 270.
So let's add them all up, and here's where they stand right now. Biden leading 98-92 on that road to 270.
Let's go to Chuck and see. I knew it. You were looking at North Carolina again.
I think we got to right now. 89% in, 42,000 votes. But what does that 89% translate to? 641,000 estimated votes still to count. So that's not an unreasonable a deficit to make up. The question is there going to be enough vote in different places? So first you try these blue counties here. This is Asheville, 92% in, so stragglers. Guilford still sitting at 84%. This could be a decent chunk of vote for Biden. Charlotte, here, Mecklenburg County, as I showed you before, not too much. Let's see what Wake looks like. We still haven't seen some Wake numbers. So I have a feeling now, North Carolina, I think the last time I said, we might finally see some action. Yeah, we're going to see action. It's called, we're not going to call that race tonight. Like, it looks more and more like North Carolina is one of those that you're going to have to wait to see all the vote coming in, because it does seem as if there's enough in different red and blue areas to make you think that thing is going to be very, very tight. However, the Democratic Senate candidate, Cal Cunningham, is underperforming Biden. So I would just say, while Biden may have a chance there, it looks a little tougher there for Cal Cunningham. Looks probably a little better for Tom Tillis. 75% in. I just want to keep track here in Arizona as we keep going. We think about 800,000 vote remains. This is a ton to make up. This is almost like a 2-to-1 that he's got to make up. This is very tough. Arizona, it could be the first state we're dealing with that looks like a state that might actually flip from 2016. Long way to go. Obviously, we want to wait for more of that vote in. But that's the first one of the Sun Belt. And it's been the one that Biden consistently led in the polls in, probably more so than any of these other Sun Belt states.
How much is that driven by the Senate race there?
Well, look, is it driven by the Senate race? Is it driven by what's been happening over 4 years? I mean, certainly Mark Kelly, ultimately, I think this is about Democrats just realizing that there's opportunity in Maricopa with these suburban, in the same way we saw basically the Denver suburbs take Colorado from a red to purple to blue. The Northern Virginia suburbs, and it turned it from, it was red when I first moved there in the early 90s, to purple to blue. That's what both in Arizona and Georgia, that Democrats think, Maricopa and Phoenix, they think that's the key to turning Arizona blue, and of course the Atlanta suburbs. So the question is, are Phoenix and Atlanta ready to join Denver and the Washington, D.C. suburbs? And that's what we're going to find out tonight.
Perhaps tonight we'll have the answer for us. Hallie Jackson's over at the White House. What have you been hearing from your sources inside the Trump campaign?
Let me jump off of something that Chuck was just talking about as it relates specifically to Georgia, because the characterization from one person that I spoke with tonight is that folks are not feeling panicked yet. They're looking at Georgia. They are perhaps not feeling as good as they had been earlier in the day about it. But at this point, that is when they're watching, because of specifically what Chuck was talking about there, the suburbs around Atlanta, the way that the president could perform. They're specifically looking, and you heard Jason Miller talking about, for example, black and Hispanic voters in Georgia. They're specifically looking at the performance that the president will have among black voters there. So that's something that they're keeping an eye on. There is a lot of, again, we have not called Florida yet here at NBC News, but there is some, I would say, preemptive dunking from members of the Trump campaign about that state. There is really a sense that I'm starting to pick up from talking to folks tonight that this is a little bit how it went in the early hours of election night 4 years ago, if you remember, feeling like the polls were wrong, feeling like they were the underdog campaign that was able to come from behind and win 4 years ago. And there are people, listen, the president has surrounded himself this year with the same sort of cast and crew that he did 4 years ago in large part. So there are a lot of people who are holding on to that memory and wondering if tonight is going to end up having the same result for President Trump. When you talk about the mood sort of more broadly, the president is spending election night here at the White House. Listen, any other election night, I would be standing here in front of you from, the election night watch party, if you will. We're not doing that tonight because of, obviously, the pandemic. Things have changed quite dramatically over the last 9 months or so. There are about 250 people, according to one attendee, inside the White House right now, inside the East Room. They're watching one of the cable networks, the president's preferred channel, frankly, at least most of the time, which is Fox News. They're watching that on the big screens, cheering when some of the races get called there, having some snacks. Members of the Trump cabinet are there, members of the Trump family as well. And right now, the sort of energy in the room, we're told, is very positive based on some of the things that we're seeing. Now, might that change as we start to get in more vote from Arizona? That is definitely one that we're drilling down on with sources tonight. That was one of the states that the folks that I've been talking to in the Trump orbit hadn't been feeling very, very confident about. They were feeling what I would say hopeful, optimistic, but not extremely confident. And there now seems to be perhaps some